Chapter 168. The old man looked around as if he was guarding against a thief. He quickly tidied up the things in the house and called out twice. The frogs that were originally lying quietly on the ground by the door all jumped away. Some ran into the forest, while others ran towards the river. After tidying up, the old man pulled Xiaofan in one direction. While walking, he explained to Xiaofan in a low voice, "You want frog poison, so naturally you want frog poison with good effects. My grandson can get it for you. You can have whatever you want." The old man was afraid that Xiaofan would change his mind and turn around to leave, so he kept talking to Xiaofan. He was afraid that Xiaofan would find it troublesome and go to other people's houses to buy. After all, there were many people in the Pu tribe who sold frog poison. For example, many people in the drumming tribe liked to buy tools that had already been smeared with frog poison. They would directly wrap it up, stuff it into a basket, and leave after paying some water moonstones. What the old man wanted to do now was to take Xiaofan to get it on the spot. Compared to other people, it was a bit more troublesome. Xiaofan didn't think much of it. As long as he could get what he wanted, he didn't mind if it was a bit troublesome. Moreover, after seeing the things that the old man scraped from the frogs, he was quite curious. In the past, when he was in the Yanjiao tribe, when he went out to hunt, the warriors also liked to use some things that came from animals. They used those poisons to smear the weapons in their hands, such as spearheads, bows, and so on. Among them, there were various kinds of poisons. Frog poison was more commonly used. When the Yanjiao tribesmen took frog poison, they would first kill the frog, then roast the dead frog over a fire. As they roasted, the poison would slowly seep out from the frog's glands. After the frog poison came out, as long as they took the weapon and smeared it back and forth on the frog's body, the desired effect would be achieved. For poisonous frogs, the warriors only needed to smear a bit of frog poison on their weapons to hunt prey. Generally, wild beasts that were poisoned by frog poison would die very quickly. Ferocious beasts had stronger resistance and wouldn't die, but their movements would be affected. "We're almost there. Don't worry," the old man said hurriedly. Xiaofan was not in a hurry, but the old man next to him was. He pulled Xiaofan to a place by the river. Looking at the big lotus leaves in the river, he shouted, "Hey, are you there?" The lotus leaves on the surface of the river swayed with the wind. Some frogs in the river croaked, but there was no human voice. The old man was so angry that his beard trembled a few times. He said again, "Come out, I see you." Still, no one answered. The old man took a deep breath and roared, "Get out here. I know you're here." Finally, a helpless reply came from a cluster of lotus leaves not far away. "Yes, Grandpa. What's the matter?" A figure jumped out from the lotus leaves and landed on a large lotus leaf by the river bank. He glanced at Xiaofan and then looked at the old man. "Grandpa, you can sell whatever you want. Why did you call me?" "I'm still sleeping." "Why are you sleeping?" The old man's eyes bulged as if they were going to pop out. "Come here, this young man from another tribe wants to buy frog poison. There are so many frog poisons in the tribe. It doesn't matter where I buy them." "Grandpa, I remember you collected several jars at home." Zhao yawned and said. The old man stopped breathing and mumbled. He didn't look at Xiaofan and wasn't afraid of the thorns on the stem of the lotus leaf. He bent his arm and picked up the stem. "Come down. Sleeping all day, are you in a hurry to get through the winter?" Zhao had no choice but to jump down from the lotus leaf. His eyes were half closed as if he hadn't woken up yet. He looked at Xiaofan. "You want to buy frog poison? What kind?" The old man slapped him and then looked at Xiaofan with a smile. "Young man, what kind of frog poison do you want?" Xiaofan thought for a moment and said, "Can I take a look at those frogs first?" He didn't know how different the frogs here were from the ones in the Yanjiao tribe. Of course, of course. The old man didn't wait for Zhao to answer and quickly answered. Zhao whispered, "Trouble," and then jumped on the lotus leaf. His cheeks puffed up and he made a few goo-goo sounds before returning to the shore. After a while, Xiaofan saw some frogs jump out from the forest and a few from the river. Most of these frogs were brightly colored, but there were also some that didn't look very conspicuous. Each frog was no bigger than a palm. After jumping over, they surrounded Zhao and didn't run away. They just stood there and occasionally moved their hind legs to wipe away the mucus on their bodies to keep their skin moist. These are all dead. This frog's poison can relieve pain and it's very effective. I used it on the wild beasts on the mountain over there. Zhao said. And then? Xiaofan asked. They died. Xiaofan, if you use too much, even if it can be used as medicine, it's poison. Zhao said. If you use poison well, it's medicine. If you don't use it well, it's poison. Xiaofan naturally knew this. This one, and this one's poison is not bad. Just a little bit can kill the wild beasts in the forest. Zhao introduced a few of the frogs to Xiaofan and then asked, "What kind of poison do you need? Poison blind? Poison mute? Numb all over? Rotten?" After asking a lot of questions, Zhao stopped and looked at Xiaofan. He usually didn't like to participate in transactions, but since his grandfather had pulled him over, he naturally had to do his part. Otherwise, if he didn't get this deal done, his grandfather would nag him again when he went back. When Xiaofan heard this series of questions, he was stunned. When he was in the Yanjiao tribe, he also used a lot of poisons, but he had never differentiated them so carefully. It seemed that the young man in front of him was very good at this. Seeing Xiaofan staring at the frogs and not saying anything, the old man standing next to him became anxious. If you don't know which one to choose, you can buy some of them and try it out. Then he turned to Zhao with a stern face, "Hurry up and make some poisonous stingers." Zhao scratched his head and helplessly said, "Okay." Then he walked towards the forest, and the old man eagerly pulled Xiaofan to follow him. Although this kid in my family is a little lazy, but his understanding of poisonous frogs, this old man doesn't dare to say that he's the best, but he's definitely ranked in the front of the tribe. Xiaofan followed them into the forest. These two people didn't have any malicious intentions, and they weren't like the Pu tribe traders who had a bellyful of ulterior motives. Moreover, Xiaofan also wanted to see how the Pu tribe people would extract poison from the frogs. Xiaofan believed in Zhao's understanding of poisonous frogs. Around Zhao's eyes and eyelids were a dazzling bright yellow pattern, which was very similar to the poisonous frog that had just jumped out. What kind of pattern would be drawn according to one's preference? From this, it could be seen that Zhao was very fond of poisonous frogs, so naturally he understood them better. While walking in the woods, when passing by some plants with long thorns, you would break off some hard thorns from them. When he had a lot of hard thorns in his hand, you would stop. Then, he used the stone knife that the old man carried with him to chop a piece of wood. He split it in the middle and placed the wood on the ground. You croaked a few times. After waiting for the frogs to come over, he took out a hard thorn. You held it between his index and middle fingers and rubbed it on the body of the nearest frogs with blue patterns. Some transparent liquid was secreted from the frog's body. This was the frog's poison that could kill an entire deer. The long hard thorn was smeared with the poison, but it did not hurt the frog at all. After smearing it, Zhao turned his wrist, palm facing down, and slapped the wood he had just split open. When he retracted his hand, the poisoned hard thorn had been firmly nailed to the wood. The tip of the hard thorn was facing up, and the one that was nailed into the wood was the broken end. Just like when nailing a nail, the other end was nailed into the wood, not the tip of the nail, but the other end. From this series of actions, it could be seen that Xiao was very proficient in this. He had done this many times before. One by one, the hard thorns smeared with poison were firmly nailed to the wood. There were 5 thorns for each type of frog poison. When one type of frog was finished, he would change to another frog and continue to apply the poison. Although this frog's poison may not be able to kill people, but this is its main effect. Xiao used the hard thorn to smear on a dark blue frog, and then smeared the poison on the hard thorn onto the leaves of a nearby plant. With a sizzling sound, a hole was quickly corroded where the poison was smeared on the leaf. There was still smoke coming out, and it smelled a little pungent. When the poison was smeared, there was no smell at all. It was hard to imagine that this kind of poison was taken from a frog that was not even the size of a palm. As for the hard thorns used by Xiao, because the surface of the thorns had a layer of corrosion-resistant hard skin, they would not be corroded by the poison. Xiao continued to nail the hard thorns smeared with poison onto the wood. When the poison on the thorns dried, he took them off the wood and wrapped them in something. When he needed to use them in the future, he could just take them out. The effect of the dried poison would not weaken much, but there was a time limit. The longer the poison was left, the weaker the poison would be. Xiaofan watched as Xiao nailed the hard thorns into the wood with his bare hands. He knew that many frog poisons could only work through the blood. If they did not cut, the poison would not have much effect. Many of them would only cause a rash on the fingers, and would not be fatal. When the warriors of the Yanjiao tribe caught animals with poison, they would take certain protective measures. They would either wrap their hands with something or use other tools to catch them. But now, there were many frog poisons here that could work directly through the skin. There was no need to cut, but the person who made the hard thorns was very calm and used his fingers without any protection. If even a little bit of poison came into contact with the skin, it would corrode the skin and create a hole or be poisoned. Especially when the thorns smeared with poison were nailed into the wood. Many people were worried that the poison on the thorns would slide down to their fingers. But Xiao was always able to pull back the moment the poison dripped down, so the poison did not touch his fingers at all. What surprised Xiaofan even more was that after there were no more thorns nailed into the wood, Xiao would directly hold the remaining thorns in his mouth. His teeth would bite the end of the thorns that was not stained with poison. As long as even a little bit of poison touched his lips, he would feel better. This was a very dangerous thing to do, but the old man next to him was not surprised. He had seen it many times and was not worried. After the thorns were smeared with poison, the poison on the thorns gradually dried. Xiao then pulled out the thorns with poison. Of course, this time he did not do it with his bare hands, but with the help of leaves. Passing the wrapped thorns to Xiaofan, Xiao said, "Well, you can try these. If you think they are good, you can come again. Just find this old man. I'm going to sleep." Chapter 169. In the end, Yu was not able to sleep and was dragged back home by the old man. The drumming tribe would only leave tomorrow, so who knew if the drumming tribe would come to his house to trade for something? Yu was a person who had done a lot of research on frog poison, but he spent most of his time sleeping in the tribe. Sometimes, he would run to the river to find a suitable place to sleep on a lotus leaf. Other times, he would enter the forest to sleep on a tree branch. Now, there was only him and his grandfather in his family, but he wasn't interested in trading. He wanted to go out of the tribe to play, but the old man wouldn't let him. Xiaofan did not have other things to do. He was not interested in pottery and coarse linen, so he simply went to talk to Yu about the frog poison. Since Yu was very knowledgeable about frog poison, he naturally knew how to use it. It would be great if the traps could be improved because of this. Since he was bored, Yu chatted with Xiaofan. Like many Pu tribe people, Yu also felt that the drumming tribe people were really stupid. Other than stone tools, they also liked to buy impractical things. If I had so many water moonstones, would trade for a lot of food, or some suitable materials and tools. When I was hungry, I would eat, and when I was full, I would go out to play. You said. You also used frog poison to make traps and catch wild beasts. Some of the wood and stone he needed were not available around, so he could only trade with other tribes to see if he could get some. Listening to Yu's story, Xiaofan only felt that the Yanjiao tribe's life was simply too different from these people's. The drumming tribe people did not have to worry too much about food. There were fish in the river, and some wild beasts in the nearby forest. If the wild beasts were not enough, they could use water moonstones to trade with other tribes. The only thing they had to worry about was the annual water moonstone harvest. Of course, there might not be a situation like this every year. As for the Pu tribe people, most of them did not like to hunt. Compared to risking their lives to hunt, trading allowed them to get more resources. Not only food, but also other daily necessities. Since their ancestors had tasted the sweetness, their descendants would do similar things. Even now, in the hearts of the Pu tribe, trading had become an essential part of their daily life. Except for the teams that had to travel far, most of the people in the Pu tribe only needed to stay in the tribe and wait for the other tribes to come and trade. They didn't need to go to those dangerous, cold, dry, and other places that they didn't like to fight with wild beasts or even fierce beasts. The surrounding tribes, including the drumming tribe, did not like to travel far, so they could only wait for the Pu tribe's expedition team to come back and trade with them. There weren't as many ferocious beasts here, and the forest wasn't as dangerous as the ones in the Yanjiao tribe. From the drumming tribe to the Pu tribe, it only took half a day. With the speed of the Yanjiao tribe's hunting team, it wouldn't even take half a day. This was the human world, the gathering place of humans. They didn't have so many threats from ferocious beasts. Instead, they only had disputes between human tribes. Every tribe had their own favorite way of life. Simply put, the people of the Pu tribe had the talent of being merchants. Where do traveling teams usually go? The central region? Xiaofan asked. Most of the time, they go to the central region. Why, do you want to go? Yes, I originally came out to gain experience. Xiaofan said. Yu was suddenly envious. He also wanted to go out. Many young people wanted to go out. The tribe's expedition team was made up of young adults. Every time he saw his peers go out with their parents, he also wanted to go. Unfortunately, his parents had already passed away. That year, the expedition team suffered heavy losses. More than 70% of the people didn't come back. Because of this, the old man didn't let you go. Actually, although the expedition team is dangerous, it isn't always so dangerous. You said. In the Pu tribe, Chief Guangho was also very supportive of young people joining the expedition team. This was not a peaceful era. There were no laws and regulations. Killing people to steal treasures was not uncommon. In the expedition team, everyone had the ability to protect themselves. It's a pity that the old man doesn't let us go. Yu was very annoyed. He studied the frog poison in addition to his interest, it was also to prepare for the expedition. Your tribe, when will the expedition team leave again? Xiaofan asked. Just now, you had said that the tribe's traveling team would come back a few days after the 2 moons overlapped. Every time, they would come back on those days to exchange more things with the drumming tribe. After the exchange, they would take the water moonstones and other things and leave the tribe, setting off for a long journey. After chatting with you for a while, Xiaofan went to find Fu Shi. Tonight, the drumming tribe would stay here for 1 night. They would leave tomorrow morning. Xiaofan also went to inquire about the Pu tribe's expedition team. In the expedition team, they could bring some people from other tribes, but they had to pay extra water moonstones. Xiaofan didn't care about this, as long as he could follow. Right now, he didn't know much about the topography and tribal divisions. Following the Pu tribe's expedition team was not a bad idea. He went to find the leader of the expedition team, paid 3 water moonstones, and took a token with a frog pattern. On the day of the expedition team's departure, Xiaofan only needed to show this token and he could leave with the Pu tribe's expedition team. Hearing that Xiaofan wanted to join the expedition team, Fu sure didn't understand. They felt that waiting here was more cost-effective. When the Pu tribe people brought the things over, they only needed to exchange water moonstones. Why should they follow? Giving away 3 water moonstones for nothing. But thinking about it, Xiaofan came out to gain experience. Fu sure was relieved. He didn't continue to persuade him, but his heart still maintained his own thoughts. The next day, the drumming tribe people prepared to leave. Fu sure looked at his rattan basket full of things and was very happy. In addition to the necessary stones, stone tools and so on, there was also good-looking pottery and a piece of linen from the central region. When he went back, he would probably attract the envy of others. Thinking of this, Fu sure couldn't help but laugh a few times. He felt that this trip was really worth it. But in the short term, he wouldn't come here to trade. When it was almost winter, he would come back to trade for some food. We'll go back first. Xiaofan, if you come back, remember to come to the drumming tribe to find us. Fu sure carried the rattan basket, standing on a crocodile, and said to Xiaofan on the shore. Okay, I'll definitely come back to find you. Watching the drumming tribe people leave, Xiaofan planned to chat with the Pu tribe people who were preparing for the expedition, hoping to get more information. Just as he was chatting with people, Xiaofan saw Fu happily running by. Fu, where are you going? Xiaofan asked. Seeing Xiaofan, Fu's smile became bigger, and he came to share his joy. My grandfather agreed. I just went to find leader Fan Ning. In a few days, I'll go with them. Speaking of this, Fu didn't have the sleepy look from yesterday. He was full of energy and couldn't wait to run a few laps around the tribe. Fan Ning was the leader of the Pu tribe's expedition team. He was called leader by the people in the team, and Xiaofan was looking for him. Congratulations. Xiaofan said. He. I won't say any more. When we go back, we need to prepare more. Fu rubbed his hands and narrowed his eyes, just like those poisonous frogs brewing their venom. In the next few days, Xiaofan also saw other tribes coming to the Pu tribe to trade. The Luo tribe was good at fishing. They were close to the river and had a mountain to rely on, so they could catch fish and many beasts with their nets. They never lacked food. Every time the Luo tribe people came, they would have a big net of prey to trade with the Pu tribe people. In addition to the Luo tribe, there were other small tribes. They were not as rich as the drumming tribe, and did not catch as much food as the Luo tribe. But each tribe had their own survival skills, such as making stone tools, finding stone materials and some rare materials. Some were also good at using medicine, directly using medicine or natural herbs to trade. In the few days that he stayed in the Pu tribe, Xiaofan had exchanged a lot of good things. Since he was preparing for the expedition, he naturally needed some good stone materials. He himself knew how to make stone tools, so he didn't need to use more water moonstones to exchange for polished stone tools. Stone tools, herbs, they all needed to be prepared. High-quality stones were not easy to find in this area, so Xiaofan exchanged more. The Pu tribe's expedition team set off 10 days later. On the day of departure, Xiaofan's things were all prepared. The team had close to 200 people, and more than 90% of them were from the Pu tribe. The expedition team gathered by the river. Fu had a big animal skin bag hanging around his neck and a big rattan basket on his back. He was panting as he ran over, followed by the old man. There were also other people around to see them off. The rattan basket was filled with many things, including stone knives, spearheads, and many dried meat and roasted insects. The old man gave some things to the people he knew in the team, and Xiaoxian's hand was also stuffed with a bottle of frog poison. It was Fu's first time joining the expedition team, and the old man hoped that everyone could help look after him. He was indeed a businessman, his brain was flexible, and he knew how to do things better than the people of the drumming tribe. Xiaoxian thought. Seeing Fu panting, Xiaoxian reached out and took the rattan basket from his back. "I'll hold this for you, I'll give it to you when we get on the raft." "Hey, no need, you also brought a lot of things. My basket is very heavy, you can't carry it." Fu hadn't finished speaking when he saw Xiaoxian easily lift the rattan basket with one hand. Fu and some people around looked at Xiaoxian, who was still relaxed, and asked, "Which tribe are you from?" They had never seen anyone stronger than the people of the drumming tribe. "Yanjiao," Xiaoxian said. "Oh." Fu and the others silently memorized this tribe's name. Xiaoxian smiled, then took the things and jumped onto the raft with the others. The shaman gave Xiaoxian some tasks. Because of natural and man-made disasters, the Yanjiao tribes were divided, and the one on the other side of the river was only one of the divisions. What Xiaoxian needed to do was to find another Yanjiao tribe. Only, until now, he hadn't heard anything about Yanjiao. The shaman gave the stone card to Xiaoxian, and also drew a totem pattern on Cha-Cha's feet. He didn't want Xiaoxian to hide anything. If the world had already forgotten about the Yanjiao tribe, then everyone would remember this name. Besides, even if he tried to hide it, once the battle started and the totem pattern was revealed, everything would be known. There was no need to lie. Chapter 170. The traveling team left from another river in the Pu tribe, and they also used the waterway. This river did not have many lotus leaves, and on the raft stood people. Xiaoxian and you were on the same raft, listening to the other people telling you about their travels. In the sky above the rafts, Cha-Cha followed. Xiaoxian had already told Fan Ning about this. At that time, Fan Ning wanted Xiaoxian to pay an extra water moon stone, but was rejected by Xiaoxian. Cha-Cha could warn in the sky, and could reduce the chances of the Pu tribe encountering danger. With such benefits, you still want to charge? Now the business here was not developed, but these people already had the potential to be profiteers. In the end, although Fan Ning's face was not very good, he did not insist. Since it was a long journey, naturally it would not be a matter of 1 or 2 days, sometimes it would take up to 100 days. Probably because there were more human tribes in this area, it was not as dangerous as the hunting area on the other side of the river. Sometimes they would encounter some trouble from underwater, or harassment from other tribes, but overall, it was still peaceful and safe. Because of their frequent travels, the people of the Pu tribe were very clear about which waterway was safer and which direction was less troublesome. Xiaoxian also memorized these routes in his heart, and when he was free, he would draw these on animal skin to complete the map. If one day the Yanjiao tribe on the other side of the river came back, they would need these maps. Nearly 1,000 years had passed, and the changes were very big. This place was completely different from what the ancestors had recorded. As they moved forward, the river became wider and wider. Near the river, there would always be some traces of human activity. Listening to the people beside them, there was a small tribe not far ahead, but that small tribe did not like to interact with people from other tribes. They were also reclusive, and when they saw people from other tribes, they would avoid them, or throw stones and wooden arrows. The Pu tribe was very unhappy with this, but they would not delay the travel speed because of this. Be careful. The person beside them who had many years of travel experience reminded them. On the shore in front, there were a few women wearing animal skin washing things. When they saw the raft team, they quickly dragged their things and ran. When the wooden raft team passed by, some arrows were shot from the forest on the slightly higher ground on the shore. This kind of strength was nothing to Xiaofan, or even to the warriors of the Yanjiao tribe. They could easily catch it and break it. However, if there were a lot of such arrows, it would be annoying. The people of the Pu tribe used their wooden shields to block the incoming arrows. Xiaofan used his blade to cut down the arrows. If it was a big tribe, maybe the Pu tribe would take a step back and communicate with them. But for such a small tribe, the people of the Pu tribe were too lazy to pay attention to those eccentric people. The speed of the rafts increased, and only after the rafts left that area did the arrows stop. In fact, the people hiding in the bushes might not have really wanted to kill the people passing by. They were just trying to scare them. If they really wanted to kill them, they would have used a more forceful method instead of using these wooden arrows that didn't even have a sharpened head. There were many tribes around, and the presence of the small tribes was very low. Most of the tribes only had a few hundred people, and their strength was not strong. They were born and died quickly, so the Pu tribe did not pay too much attention to them. The people of the Pu tribe around Xiaofan did not want to talk too much. They only cared about their own interests. 2 days later. In front of us is the fork. We will stay there for 2 days. The person next to him looked at the dark sky and said. In front of them, the river was divided into two, forming a Y shape. There were many people from other tribes who were traveling to the central region. The Pu tribe knew many of them, and sometimes they would travel together to make the traveling team bigger. This way, they would have more security. There were too many strong people in the central region. They could only use numbers to fight. Xiaofan looked over. On both sides of the river, there were no mountains, no dense forests, and became flat. Here, there were many houses. There were wooden houses, and also stone houses. The architectural style was also diverse. There were oval, triangular, flat-roofed wooden huts, pointed-roofed thatched roofs. Just by looking at this, one could see that this was not a tribe. Looking at the people, although the characteristics were not as obvious as the houses, people who saw them would have the same thought: these people were too mixed up, like a plate of loose sand. Every grain of sand came from different river basins, and then gathered here. Although there were many people, but many of them looked very weak. Some were as thin as a match, some had lifeless eyes. Regardless of whether they were adults or children, they were all the same. The children were slightly better. In addition to their physical condition, some would even smile. But the adults, more often than not, were at a loss and depressed. In the end, what happened to these people that made them like this? These people are? Xiaofan asked the people next to him who were very experienced. You mean them? The people of the Pu tribe glanced over, some sighed, some did not care. They are wanderers. The wanderers they spoke of were not tourists, but those who were homeless and had no place to live. They were like rootless duckweed, often moving around, doing all kinds of things to survive. They are people who lost their fire seed. A person of the Pu tribe next to them said. People who lost their fire seed, no matter where they went, their life would be in darkness. Without their fire seed, where would their power come from? Lost their fire seed? Xiaofan was very curious about this statement. Yes, their tribe no longer exists. Their fire seed was extinguished, and they lost their source of power. The person said. In the year Xiaofan awakened, the shaman told them that their source of power was in their body. Under the call of the fire seed, it would gradually begin to awaken, which was the totem in their mind. If the fire seed was extinguished, it meant that the tribe no longer existed. The totem would naturally dissipate, and the source of power in the body would naturally fall into a deep sleep, or even disappear. No wonder those people were in such a state. The tribe was gone, the totem power was gone, and they became wanderers, wandering in the world, at a loss. The only thing they could do was to survive, completely dominated by survival instinct. However, the fire seed being extinguished, this statement made Xiaofan very surprised. He originally thought that the special flame would exist for a long time, but now it seemed that it could be extinguished. But when it was extinguished, the tribe would be gone. According to the people of the Pu tribe, after the fire seed was extinguished, the tribe would disappear. Some people would use their own special survival skills in exchange for food. For example, coolies. Perhaps, for the rest of their lives, they would be in such a state of wandering. Some people would abandon their beliefs, and join other tribes. Their descendants would naturally awaken the totem of other tribes under the call of the fire seed of other tribes. But if the totem power in the body was too mixed, it would be good if the awakening was successful. Even if they would be discriminated against, at least they would have a safe place to stay, and a place to belong. But if the awakening failed, they would be driven out of the tribe, and continue the wanderer life of their ancestors. Why don't they go hunting? Xiaofan asked. But after asking, Xiaofan realized that there might be various situations. Without the totem power, hunting was too risky. Hunting? You smiled. Unless they have to, they won't go hunting by themselves. Even if this place was not like the forest on the other side of the river, but in many places, it was impossible for one or two people to resist. At least a team was needed to barely survive, especially those who had been abandoned by the fire seed. Without faith and power, 9 out of 10 people would die. If both parents are not wanderers, what will happen to the offspring? Xiaofan asked. Generally speaking, many tribes do not require marriage with people within the tribe, for example, our Pu tribe. As long as the descendant accepted the guidance of the fire seed, it would be fine. However, there was only one choice, either accept the tribe's fire seed or accept the other. He could only awaken one source of power. Otherwise, if he awakened both sources of power, it would cause conflict. The people of small tribes are more inclined to marry people within the tribe, but this also has its disadvantages. If there are too few people, it is easy to cause chaos. The Pu tribe's experienced traveler also said that in order to increase the population of small tribes, many unimaginable promiscuity occurred, making the whole tribe a mess. The people of the Pu tribe were quite disdainful of this. Xiaofan thought about it. When the Yanjiao tribe was stranded in that place, there were not many people, but there were records in the hands of the shamans. According to Xiaofan's records, the tribe's population growth was very slow, but very stable. There was no chaos like what you said. When he was in the tribe, Xiaofan felt that the Yanjiao tribe's shamans did not have an easy life. Now that he heard about the situation of other tribes, if it were not for the leadership of the Yanjiao tribe, generation after generation of shamans, it might have become like that. In that situation, they had to face all kinds of fierce beasts in the surrounding forest. It was not easy to develop to the scale of nearly 2,000 people today. A good shaman, a good leader, was indeed very important. The Pu tribe's traveler team came ashore one after another. Xiaofan saw a small team of 10 people quickly come over to help the Pu tribe's rafts carry things and look after the rafts on the water. There was also a person holding a whip and staring fiercely at them. Who are they? Xiaofan asked the person next to him. You mean them? It was the same words as before, but this time the Pu tribe's people's eyes were no longer indifferent or sighing, but with extreme contempt, heavily said, those are slaves. Xiaofan's eyelids jumped. At this time, Xiaofan only heard a presumptuous laughter in front of him. The laughter was a bit harsh. Looking up, Xiaofan saw a man casually draped in a leopard pelt, smiling as he slowly walked over. He was tall and thin, with a pale face, unlike the tanned skin of the people around him who were busy working. His eyes were slightly squinted, and he seemed to be laughing happily. But from his eyes flashed a sharp light that told Xiaofan that this person was not easy to get along with. Ha ha ha. We meet again. When that person came over, the leader of the traveler team, Fan Ning, quickly went to greet him. Fan Ning, who had always been unhappy with Xiaofan, was now smiling like a flower, and went to talk to the other party. "Who is that person?" Xiaofan asked the person next to him. This time the Pu tribe's people's voice was not so loud, slightly lowering their voice, they said, "He is the master of those slaves." In other words, the person wearing leopard skin was a slave master. Chapter 171. Although Xiaofan was very curious about the slaves and the slave master, Xiaofan still had to follow the travel team to settle down first. The slave master had a lot of houses here. At such an intersection, there were a lot of teams coming and going. Every day, there were many people like the Pu tribe's travel team who came here to settle down. He would collect a certain fee. All the work was done by the slaves. But Xiaofan found that the slaves who were despised by the Pu tribe, although their health was also very poor, compared to the wanderers, they had something more. Right, strength, it was strength. The slaves had more strength than the wanderers. It was not necessarily strength, it could be something else, speed, or reaction, or something else. Some of the slaves were in pain, some were numb. They turned a blind eye to the disdain around them. Becoming a slave meant abandoning all the beliefs of the past. From now on, he only believed in one thing, his master. The night was getting darker. Fan Ning did not tell the slave master that he still needed to arrange the team. The temporary place to settle down was not very good. The space was small, and everyone was squeezed inside. This was better than feeding the mosquitoes by the river. Moreover, at night, it was not safe outside. They might be killed by the wanderers if they went out. It was said that some crazy wanderers would even eat people when they were hungry. Although they were not afraid of them, it was always good to be on guard. It was better to stick together. As for Cha-Cha, Xiaofan did not need to worry. This guy could survive in the hunting grounds. Here, those beasts were no threat to him. Even if he encountered danger, he would find Xiaofan. At this time, in the surrounding area, in the different houses that Xiaofan had seen before, there were also fires lit. The people who went out to work came back with the fruits of the day's work. Some came back from the forest, some came back from the river where the travel team stopped. They also did hard work, but the pay was very little. A thin figure walked quickly through the night, the wooden stick in his hand waved quickly, driving away the buzzing mosquitoes. Coming to a small wooden house, he moved a thick wooden board, flashed in, and then quickly moved the board back to block the mosquitoes outside. "He's back." Inside the house, a similarly thin woman was sitting there with a small child in her arms. She looked exhausted. The child in the woman's arms was sleeping. In the corner, there was a wooden plank. It was a bed, and a thin figure was sleeping on it. Yes. The man who had just returned from outside put aside the animal skin with several holes on it and took out the day's harvest. They were some fruits from the mountains, a fish, and a rabbit. The surrounding wild beasts that could be hunted had mostly been hunted. If they went any further, their abilities were limited. If they went any further, they would die. As for the fruits, many of them had already been picked before they ripened. Today, his luck was still good. He found a few big fruits in a corner that was not easy to be noticed by others. Seeing the fish and rabbit, the woman's eyes lit up. This was already considered good. The woman carefully put the child in her arms on the wooden bed, and went to put the fish and rabbit into the pot to cook. Because these two animals had been slaughtered and cleaned outside, they did not need to be treated much. They could be cooked directly. She came back and bit the fruits one by one. After a while, the woman put the juicy fruit next to the mouth of the 1-year-old child on the wooden bed. With food, the child did not sleep anymore. She hugged the fruit and ate quietly. The woman handed 2 fruits to her daughter on the wooden bed, "Eat some first." How was it today? The woman asked. The man sighed and shook his head. At that time, there were 10 people who came here with their family. 3 of them joined other tribes, 1 successfully stayed, and the other 2 were driven away and did not survive. 4 of them were left behind by wild beasts when they formed a group to hunt in the mountains. 2 of them became slaves. The remaining person, along with his family, had been staying here for almost 10 years. If it doesn't work, I plan to find someone to leave with us. Let's go to another place. I've already talked to them today. The man said. As he was speaking, the wooden plank blocking the door was slapped. Yan Shuo, open the door. Hearing this voice, the man's tight muscles relaxed. He put down the stone knife in his hand, stood up and moved the wooden plank away. The person who came in was shorter than Yan Shuo. He was even skinnier than Yan Shuo, like a bag of bones. His eyes were bloodshot, and his breathing was rapid, as if he was making some kind of decision. What's wrong? Yan Shuo asked. The other person came in and suddenly raised his head. Because he was too emotional, the expression on his face was somewhat distorted. Yan Shuo, I plan to go there. Saying this, the person looked in a direction. Yan Shuo's eyes widened in surprise. I really can't take it anymore. Today I met them, and they have strength again. That person said, and showed Yan Shuo his broken arm. This arm, according to the current situation, would not be able to recover in a short period of time. Yan Shuo knew who they was referring to. It was the people who came here with him, and became slaves. And the direction that the person in front of him was looking at, was the place where the slaves were. Yan Shuo opened his mouth, but did not know what to say. Originally, he thought that everyone would leave together, find a better place, and work hard to survive. But he did not expect that the other party had already given up, and could not endure anymore. The feeling of having no strength really made people despair. Okay, I'm leaving. That person walked to the door and stopped. With his back facing Yan Shuo, he slightly tilted his head, make your decision soon. Also, don't think about those impossible things anymore. After that person left, Yan Shuo sat there quietly, looking at the fire in the bonfire, and did not speak. When his eyes stared at the bonfire, the muscles on Yan Shuo's face twitched twice, and the veins on his not-so-thick arm could be clearly seen. The strangest thing was that the lines that appeared on Yan Shuo's face were not clear. If Xiao Xian was here, he would definitely recognize that these were the totem lines on the faces of the Yanjiao tribe's totem warriors. Only, compared to the totem warriors of the Yanjiao tribe, the totem lines on Yan Shuo's face were not clear, and not stable. Sometimes they were slightly clear, and sometimes they were completely hidden. And on his naked upper body and arms, there were no lines. Yan Shuo had always felt that his strength should be far more than this. But, because he was a wanderer, he did not have a fire seed, so he could not become a true totem warrior. He knew that his ancestors were from the Yanjiao tribe. In the words that were passed down from generation to generation, everyone remembered the Yanjiao tribe and the tribe's totem. Father said that the Yanjiao tribe still exists. Yan Shuo said in a low voice. The people of the Yanjiao tribe are all strong warriors. They can easily carry a bear. The fire seed's flames can cover their whole body. The flames of the Yanjiao tribe's fire seed can cover an entire mountain. At first, Yan Shuo was just muttering to himself in a low voice. His tone was still calm, as if he was telling a story. But gradually, his tone became depressed, and his eyes became red. Because of their obsession, the ancestors of the Yan Shuo tribe would always give their juniors names with the word Yan or Jiao. This was so that they would remember the name of their tribe. If they could find their tribe one day, their wish would be fulfilled. Therefore, the later generations were not allowed to join any other tribe. They were not allowed to be slaves. Even if they died, they were not allowed to betray their own tribe. But so many years had passed, and the Yanjiao tribe was no longer remembered by people. No one in the surroundings had heard of such a tribe. No matter how many times Yan Shuo said that his tribe still existed, and that his fire seed still existed, the others did not believe him. But, Yan Shuo's strength was indeed greater than others, and he would also reveal faint totem lines. This was an important reason why he was able to persevere until now. But now, he was at a loss. The other 10 people who came with him were all unable to persevere. Now, only his family was left. Leave? If there were not enough people, if only his family left, they would probably die before they could go far. 2 days ago, someone left, but the next day, he was found dead by the river not far away. The blood on his body was sucked dry by the mosquitoes. Half of his body was bitten by the wild beasts that came out at night in the nearby forest. If another day passed, not even his bones would be left. Even if Yan Shuo's strength was greater than others, it was only relative to the wanderers. For those totem warriors, it was not enough. Power. With power, one could live better in such a world. This was also the reason why many wanderers who could not endure it chose to become slaves. Although they lost their freedom and lost a lot, they could still gain power from their slave masters. But, how should they choose? Should they continue to endure and search, or wait for news from the Yanjiao tribe? Or, like those wanderers who could not endure it, find a tribe to rely on, or become a slave? No, no. Yan Shuo held his head with both hands. He could not give up, he could not. Father said, the tribe still exists, still exists. The woman sitting on the wooden plank looked at her husband like this. She wanted to say something but hesitated. She wanted to comfort him, but she also felt that she should be like the others and choose another path. But, just as the woman was about to speak, she realized that on her husband's body, there were some lines that extended down his face and neck. And on his arms, there were some flame-like patterns that started from his shoulders, extended to his entire upper arm, and then past his elbow, that. The woman was too shocked, she could not speak. Yan Shuo, who was holding his head and thinking, raised his head. His eyes were still filled with red veins. Seeing his wife's appearance, he was a little confused. But when he looked at the direction his wife was pointing at, he also saw those totem patterns that had already spread out. Since he was born, other than the faint totem patterns that appeared on his face when he was 10 years old, there were no other patterns. But now, these totem patterns that appeared, those patterns, were like firewood that had been prepared long ago but had not been lit. Now, they were lit one by one. Although they were not clear, they could still roughly see the patterns. Yan Shuo thought of his father's words, "You have to believe that in our blood, the power is still there. It is just sleeping. Until one day, when the time is right, it will start to gradually awaken." At the same time, Xiaofan, who was squeezed into a small room with the others and resting with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Yan Shuo's direction. Chapter 172. Xiaofan felt the totem in his mind jumping. The sudden change woke him up from his light sleep. Surrounded by wooden walls, he couldn't see the situation outside. In the room, there was a layer of hay on the ground, and many people were lying on their stomachs, snoring louder and louder. Xiaofan quietly sensed. It was in that direction. But, what happened to make the totem change like this? He wanted to go out and take a look, but soon, the change stopped. The totem flame in his mind returned to its usual state, no longer surging. Xiaofan temporarily dispelled the idea of going out immediately. Here, he was surrounded by people he didn't know, and this was the slave owner's territory. If he went out at night, he would probably be regarded as a person with bad intentions and be attacked by the patrolman. After sensing again and confirming that the totem didn't move, Xiaofan closed his eyes and continued to rest. The next day, the people of the Pu tribe didn't have any arrangements. Only Fan Ning and a few other important members of the travel team went to discuss with the other travel teams. It had nothing to do with the rest of the team. Xiaofan originally planned to go to that direction to investigate, to see if he could find the reason for the totem's change last night, but as soon as he left the house, he was pulled away by you. You found a new kind of frog poison in the other travel teams. It was a frog species that didn't exist in their tribe. He wanted to go by himself, but remembered what his grandfather said before he left, so he pulled a few more people, including Xiaofan. Xiaofan, what are you looking at? One of them asked. Are they all wanderers over there? Xiaofan pointed in that direction. The people of the Pu tribe, who had several years of travel experience, looked over there and said, more or less, but I advise you not to go. The people over there are crazy. If you go, you may be entangled. There are many who want to join other tribes, but they are too dangerous, so very few tribes are willing to accept them. Despair made people crazy. After suppressing it for too long, intense emotions were naturally there. This made many people avoid them. You want to go over there? You asked. I just want to take a look, Xiaofan replied. You don't have to go there now, a middle-aged man next to him said. The wanderers there will go out early. Some will go to the surrounding mountains to look for food, and some will go nearby to see if they can find other opportunities. Xiaofan looked in that direction. Indeed, there weren't many people walking around outside, so he left with Zhao and the others. He would come back later to take a look. Not long after Xiaofan and the others left, Yan Shuo moved away the wooden planks in front of the house where the wanderers gathered. There was exhaustion on his face, but he was in a good mood. Compared to his eyes that were like stagnant water in the past, there was a glimmer of light in his eyes now. Last night, for the first time, he saw the totem patterns of the legendary totem warriors on his body. Moreover, they were from the Yanjiao tribe. Although the totem patterns were not clear and did not last for long, Yan Shuo felt that there was light in his life again. He was so excited that he could not sleep for the whole night. People who had been in the dark for a long time only needed a little bit of light to ignite their hope. Last night, besides the changes in the totem patterns, Yan Shuo also felt a slight change in his body. It looked the same as before, but Yan Shuo felt that his strength seemed to have increased a little. When he moved the wooden planks, he obviously felt a lot easier. Originally, he planned to leave here with the others, but after knowing that things had changed last night, Yan Shuo temporarily put down the idea of leaving. After he got up in the morning, he discussed with his wife for a while before coming out of the house. It was much later than usual. There were already people around looking for food. Yan Shuo also planned to leave, but unexpectedly, just as he was about to leave, he saw someone coming from the river bank. Seeing the other party, Yan Shuo frowned. He turned around and said to his wife in the house, "Stay in the house, don't come out." The person who came over walked leisurely with a vine whip in his hand. On the river bank, where the slaves carried goods, people like this could often be seen. They were also slaves, but compared to the lowest class slaves, they were slightly better. They were responsible for supervising the lowest class slaves, and if anyone was lazy, they would be mercilessly whipped. Probably because they enjoyed this kind of power, they usually whipped anyone who was not pleasing to the eye. Sometimes, they would even beat someone to death. But as long as the slave owner did not pursue the matter, it would be fine. And the person who came over was called Li. He was a wanderer who came here from other places with Yan Shuo. Later, they could not endure it and joined other tribes, but were rejected again, and became slaves. And Li was the first to choose to become a slave among the people who came with them. At the beginning, Li was also just a slave of the lowest class. He had to do a lot of work every day, and had very little time to rest. Sometimes, he would be so tired that he almost fell down and was even whipped. However, he ran into a good opportunity. Someone had offended the leader of a relatively large traveling group, and the slave master had directly slaughtered a few people as an apology to that traveling group. It was at that time that Ruthless was promoted to the position of slave master. After becoming a slave, they could obtain new strength from the slave owner. And as they were promoted, they could obtain more resources and strength from the slave owner, and naturally their strength would also increase. The person who came to find Yan Shuo last night had his arm broken and his body full of injuries caused by Li. Maybe it was to show off his power, or maybe it was because of some personal grudges. He was ruthless towards his former companions. If it was not because there was something at the river bank and Li had to go over immediately to deal with it, that person would have died long ago. Among the people who came, some left, some died, and some were injured. Other than Yan Shuo's family, the last person could not withstand the pressure last night and chose to become a slave. Now, only Yan Shuo was left. Li held a long vine whip and walked towards Yan Shuo step by step, with a sinister smile on his face. If he was also a slave of the slave owner, he might not dare to kill him directly. Although sometimes the slave owner would not care about the life or death of the lowest level slave, he was afraid that the slave owner would have other ideas. It wasn't easy for him to be promoted, so Li naturally didn't want to anger his slave master. Don't look at how that slave master was all smiles all day long. When he made a move, he was extremely cruel. Thinking back to the time when the slave master decisively killed someone with a raise of his hand, a chill ran down Li's spine. However, the slave owner would not care about wanderers. These wanderers did not know what was good for them, and even rejected the people that the slave owner fancied. At that time, the slave owner fancied Yan Shuo, who was the strongest among them. Unfortunately, Yan Shuo did not know what was good for him and rejected him. And Li seized the opportunity and chose to follow the slave owner and leave Yan Shuo and the others. Wasn't it just a little stronger? They were all wanderers, but they did not have a tribe, and their fire seed had long been extinguished. What was the difference between them? As for the Yanjiao tribe that Yan Shuo kept telling them on the way here, Li did not believe a single word. If the tribe was still there, why would they fall into such a situation? If the tribe was still there, why did Yan Shuo not look for it? If the Yanjiao tribe really existed, why did no one in the traveling team know about it? At that time, Yan Shuo seemed to be the calmest among them, but in fact, in the hearts of others, Yan Shuo was a lunatic, always fantasizing about those impossible things. What Li hated the most was the hopeful look in Yan Shuo's eyes when he mentioned the Yanjiao tribe. In the past, he could not beat Yan Shuo, but after becoming a slave, he once again had power. It was just that he did not have the time to find these former companions to communicate. But now, he had a lot of free time every day. Yesterday, he found one of them, and today, he deliberately came to find Yan Shuo. In order to avoid the situation of being called away at the last minute yesterday, he also let people who were promoted by the slave owner like him to help watch the slaves by the river bank. Li held a whip in one hand, and played with a palm-sized shell in the other. He heard that in the central region, there were places that liked to use beautiful shells to exchange for things. Unfortunately, the shells in this place were far from that level. They were ugly and weak, just like the people here. Crack! The shell in his hand was instantly crushed into pieces by Li. I heard that you guys are not living well now? Li looked at the alert Yan Shuo, and then looked at the messy wooden shack behind Yan Shuo that looked like it could be blown down by a gust of wind. He smiled sinisterly, and in the next moment, he raised his hand and viciously lashed out with the whip. The vine whip hit the wooden shack. The wooden shack, which was not sturdy to begin with, immediately fell down with a crackling sound, and a corner of the roof collapsed. Li. Seeing that Li intended to continue destroying his house, Yan Shuo could not bear it anymore. After all, his wife and children were inside. If the house was destroyed, where would they sleep tonight? There were too many dangerous factors around, and the two children were still young. It was easy for accidents to happen. Li came with a murderous intent. Yan Shuo knew clearly what his purpose was, and did not expect to have a peaceful conversation. Yan Shuo held the chipped stone knife that he usually used, and rushed towards Li. Li looked at Yan Shuo, doubt flashing in his eyes. Yan Shuo seemed to be different from before. It should not be like this. What happened to Yan Shuo? However, Li was not worried. No matter what happened, Yan Shuo, a wanderer, was still not his opponent. Yan Shuo, who instantly rushed forward, waved his knife based on his experience of hunting wild beasts. An unsuppressible fighting spirit suddenly rose in his heart. It was different from before. Although Yan Shuo's strength was greater than others, his body seemed to be blocked by a large gate, and he could not create much waves. But now, although there was the same feeling of obstruction as before, Yan Shuo felt that the resistance was much smaller. When he waved his knife, there was a kind of indescribable carefree feeling. Was this power? The shadow of the knife carried the power of destruction. Every knife seemed to want to harvest its prey, and slashed towards Li. And on Yan Shuo's face, totem patterns that were clearer than before appeared. Almost at the same time, Xiaofan, who was pulled by Li and the others to look at the poisonous frog, moved his gaze away from the poisonous frog, and looked towards the wanderer's residence. Li, I have something to do and will leave first. Help me get some poison. Xiaofan handed Li a water moon stone, and quickly left. Hey, then we will go back to the house first. Li looked at Xiaofan, who left in a hurry, and did not think much of it. He once again looked at the poisonous frog in front of him. Chapter 173. Li originally thought that he only needed one hand to cripple him, but he didn't expect that Yan Shuo would suddenly explode with power that was different from before. Even the speed at which he swung his sword was much faster. This made Li have no choice but to take out the stone sword at his waist to block. Bang 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 bang. The crisp sound of the stone swords colliding spread throughout the area where the wanderers lived. But no one came over. They all stood far away and watched. Wanderers had no power and no tribe to support them. It wasn't strange for them to be killed. Even if they got along well with Yan Shuo's family and received help from him, they were unwilling to provoke the slaves of the slave masters. However, what surprised everyone was that the totem tattoo on Yan Shuo's face wasn't there just now. It appeared during the battle and wasn't drawn on purpose. It was different from those scammers who pretended to be totem warriors. Although it was much fainter compared to totem warriors, it still surprised the surrounding people. The explosive power collided with the stone swords. Debris flew from the swords, hitting Li's face until he felt a stinging pain. Looking at Yan Shuo again, his face was also scratched by the debris, but he didn't seem to feel it. Instead, he became braver and fiercer. Feeling the numbness on his wrist, the killing intent in Li's eyes became stronger and stronger. Fortunately, he came today. He didn't know what method Yan Shuo used to increase his power. If he waited a little longer, he might become even stronger. At that time, it would be difficult to kill him. Fortunately, although the current Yan Shuo's power had increased, it was still not enough. Bang! The stone swords used by the two were not of the best quality. In addition to Yan Shuo's explosive power just now, he attacked fiercely again and again. In the end, the two swords broke. The stone sword in Li's hand was the first to break. The stone sword in Yan Shuo's hand also had obvious cracks. With one more strike, the stone sword would break. They couldn't be used anymore. After a short confrontation, the two separated. The surrounding wanderers who were watching were very surprised. After all, wanderers didn't have much power, and Li was promoted by the slave masters. But that Yan Shuo, who was usually inconspicuous, was actually so strong. No, usually when they entered the mountain with Yan Shuo, they didn't feel that Yan Shuo was so strong. But today was different. That short burst just now was also strange. A totem tattoo actually appeared on Yan Shuo's face. After Yan Shuo stopped, he only felt a burst of pain in his arms. He had never exploded like this before, even when he was in the most dangerous situation. There seemed to be some kind of power in his body. Just now, he had unconsciously concentrated that power at one point and exploded it. That was why his attacks had been strengthened. Looking at the broken blade on the ground, Yan Shuo was somewhat excited. If he was given more time, he believed that he would become even stronger. Even Ruthless would not be his opponent. Li's eyes were hazy as he looked at Yan Shuo, who had his hands on his knees and was panting heavily. His heart was even more determined to kill Yan Shuo today. Li threw the broken blade in his hand towards Yan Shuo, but Yan Shuo dodged to the side. Crack! Half of the wooden wall of the wooden hut that was hit by the broken saber had collapsed. Inside the house, Yan Shuo's wife was holding their children. None of the three screamed. Yan Shuo's wife had a worried look on her face. The one-year-old child in her arms stared at his father outside, as if he didn't know what was going on. He didn't know how to be afraid, and his eyes were wide open. As for Yan Shuo's daughter, she stared hatefully at Li outside. She remembered that her father had helped that person before, but that person always caused trouble for her father. Now, he even wanted to kill her father. Meeting the gazes of the three people in the house, the sinister smile in Li's eyes deepened. He wouldn't leave a single person in the house alive. "Yo, what's the matter?" A light voice floated over. Yan Shuo looked over and clenched his fists. Facing Li, he was still confident, but this person, he had no confidence. And the originally savage Li, after hearing this voice, immediately put on a flattering smile. "Why have you come?" The person who came was wearing a beast skin coat that looked like snake skin. The coat was slightly long, and there was a tail-like belt at the back. On his body, there was a snake that was as thick as an adult's thigh. That pair of snake eyes that seemed to have no temperature stared at the surrounding people. Everyone who was stared at by it felt their scalp tighten. This kind of person was also a slave, but his position was one level higher than Li's. Many times, the slave masters didn't care about things and let them do it. And people like Li were all subordinate to these people. Really a piece of trash. "You can't even deal with a wanderer, what's the use of having you?" That person said slowly. Li's forehead was sweating, and he nervously ran over. He squeezed out a smile and found an excuse for his mistake. "Boss, I don't know what happened to Yan Shuo. He actually has a totem tattoo and his strength has increased a lot." The person who was carelessly teasing the big snake on his body raised his small eyes and glanced at Yan Shuo. He sneered, as if he was looking at something ugly, and said with disdain, "Totem tattoo? Is a totem tattoo like that?" As he spoke, that person raised his hand, and the snake slid down from his body. And on that person's body, from his neck to his arms, legs, and other places, there were some clear patterns that appeared one after another. Those patterns were like rings that were linked together to form a chain. More and more wanderers were paying attention to this side, and that person felt proud. He was also a wanderer in the past, but he followed the slave masters earlier, and was promoted, and had more strength. Only at their level did they truly have the mark of a slave master. Not every slave was qualified to have a mark. Only those who were entrusted with important tasks by the slave masters were qualified to have it. People like Li were not qualified. For wanderers who did not have a totem tattoo was an extravagant hope. Even if it was not a totem tattoo, other tattoos would do, as they represented strength. Some wanderers saw the slave mark on that person's body, and their eyes flashed with struggle. No matter what those marks were, it was a symbol of strength, and what they hoped to have the most was strength. Maybe, becoming a slave was not a bad idea. It was just a little hard work. Maybe one day, he could also climb to the level of having a mark. No matter what others thought, Yan Shuo stared at the person in front of him vigilantly. This person was very strong, and he could not defeat him at all. And the other party did not hide his killing intent, which made Yan Shuo understand that this conflict was unavoidable. He would die. Not only him, but also his wife and children in the house behind him. Run? He could not run away. Being targeted by these slaves, it was impossible to run away. Yan Shuo was not resigned. If there was a tribe, who would dare to bully them? How did the slave masters treat the traveling teams of the tribes? How did they treat wanderers like them? He was not resigned. He finally had a glimmer of hope, but now he was going to lose his life again. Yan Shuo put one hand behind his back, and made a gesture to his wife in the house. This was the way they were familiar with. He would try his best to delay the person in front of him, and let his wife and children escape. Yan Shuo, whose back was facing the house, did not know that the woman in the house was already crying. She hugged her children tightly, and held a stone thorn in her hand. She did not plan to run away. Since she could not run away, she might as well die together. Even if she could run away, she could not bring her children to live. She did not have the ability. That person walked towards Yan Shuo step by step. He was not worried that Yan Shuo would escape, because he could not escape. At the same time, he also wanted to let the wanderers see the difference between them. He really enjoyed the feeling of being watched by the crowd. Looking at the dim tattoo on Yan Shuo's face that he had never seen before, that person said in a teaching tone, "A real totem tattoo does not look like this." After speaking, that person's speed suddenly increased. His 5 fingers formed a claw, and grabbed towards Yan Shuo's neck. Yan Shuo only felt that the person was just a few dozen steps away, but in the blink of an eye, he was already in front of him. At this moment, Yan Shuo suddenly felt a suffocating feeling, as if his throat was already tightly gripped by that hand. However, when that hand was less than half a palm's distance from Yan Shuo, it stopped. It was forcefully stopped by someone. The person who grabbed Yan Shuo only felt a shadow flash in front of him. The hand that was about to grab Yan Shuo's throat was suddenly restrained by someone who suddenly appeared. Looking up, that person's pupils shrank rapidly, as if he had seen something inconceivable. His eyes widened, as if his eyeballs were about to pop out. Li and the other wanderers who were looking at this side also stared blankly. Their line of sight moved from the face of the person who suddenly appeared to Yan Shuo's face, and then looked at the former, and then back at Yan Shuo. They kept looking back and forth, and finally came to a conclusion. The totem tattoo on their faces was the same. 1. 2. 1. Then tell me, what does a real totem tattoo look like? Xiaofan grabbed that person's arm, and asked in a calm voice. His tone was obviously very calm, but it made those who heard it feel as if a bucket of ice was poured over their heads. This was a real totem tattoo, one that was exactly the same as Yan Shuo's totem tattoo. It was not the dim tattoo like Yan Shuo's, but a very clear one, as if it was alive. Tribe. This was what everyone who saw this thought in their hearts. Xiaofan did not care about the others. He raised his hand, and threw the person he was grabbing away. After the other person stood firm, he walked towards that person step by step, just like how that person had treated Yan Shuo at the beginning. Wherever Xiaofan stepped, he left a deep footprint. With every step, the dust and gravel on the ground would be shaken up. No, that person wanted to say something, but Xiaofan suddenly sped up. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of that person. He did not hold any stone tools in his hands, but like a hard stone axe, he fiercely smashed towards that person. Because of the totem power, the flame-like totem tattoo on his exposed arm spread to his elbows, making it extremely conspicuous. That person simply did not have the time to speak or be surprised. He instinctively crossed his arms and raised them above his head, intending to forcefully resist this fierce attack. A loud bang sounded in the air. That person was unable to resist Xiaofan's sudden attack. His legs were unable to withstand such a violent force, and after bending, he knelt on the ground. Where his knees hit the ground, a deep mark was left on the ground. His two arms, in this short period of time, also let out the sound of bones breaking. The snake that was following that person previously shot towards Xiaofan, opening its mouth to reveal two long sharp fangs. This was poisonous, extremely poisonous. However, Xiaofan acted as if he did not see it, and did not react to the snake's attack. Yan Shuo was so anxious that he wanted to rush over, but he saw a shadow gliding down from the sky and flying up again, taking away that extremely dangerous snake with it. Li raised his head to look at the sky, and was met with a face full of snake blood. Pa! A snake's head was thrown down. Not bothering to wipe away the snake blood on his face, Li looked at the snake's head that had rolled to his feet. Suddenly, he felt weak all over, and his legs went soft. Whoosh! A figure that was much taller than a human flapped its wings and landed on the ground. The snake that was usually rampant had already lost its head, and its remaining body was being torn apart by the large bird. The sharp bird claws easily tore the snake's flesh off, opening its stomach and causing snake blood to splatter everywhere. Probably because they had experienced the humiliation of being dragged down from the sky by a snake, the creatures that Cha-Cha hated the most were snakes. They were also merciless in tearing them apart. Yan Shuo looked at the young man who had saved him. The totem tattoo on his arm was exactly the same as the one that had appeared on his arm last night. Looking at the large bird that had just landed, on the claws that were tearing apart the snake's body, a clear pattern was imprinted into Yan Shuo's vision, causing his breathing to become heavy. Tribe, the totem of the Yanjiao tribe, Yan Shuo only felt that the blood in his entire body was boiling, and his whole body was trembling. He turned around and looked at the young man that he had just met for the first time today, walking over step by step. Xiaofan came in front of Yan Shuo, grinned, and said, "Let me introduce myself. I am Xiaofan from the Yanjiao tribe." Chapter 174. The Yanjiao tribe. Many of the people who lived in the Wanderer area were familiar with Yan Shuo. They had hunted together in the mountains, so they naturally heard Yan Shuo mention the Yanjiao tribe. However, at that time, they all thought that Yan Shuo was crazy and did not face reality. Even if the Yanjiao tribe still existed, it would only be a small tribe. The emergence and extinction of small tribes happened every day. Even if the Yanjiao tribe Yan Shuo mentioned was still there, it would not last long, right? However, now it seemed that it was not what they had imagined. How could a young man from a small tribe have such power? Almost effortlessly, the slave with the snake, who had caused them countless troubles, was beaten to the ground, unable to move. How could a small tribe have an eagle that was much bigger than a man? Looking at the big snake that had been torn to shreds, one could tell that this eagle was not just big. Its claws could directly nail a person to death. Tribe, what an enviable word. They had thought that Yan Shuo's family would be killed by the slave today, but they did not expect the situation to be reversed. With a tribe, there was a place to belong. Their flame was still there. Yan Shuo's bitter days were over. Yan Shuo naturally knew what the others knew. However, things happened too suddenly, and he did not know how to react. Since he was very young, he had dreamed that one day he could return to the Yanjiao tribe that his ancestors talked about. Every time he fought alone, he would think, what kind of place was the Yanjiao tribe? How were the people there? Was the tribe big? Were the totem warriors strong? Now, he looked at the person in front of him who was much younger than him, who had solved the problem with just a lift of his hand, and then looked at the big bird that was tearing the snake meat. He was so excited that he choked with emotion, and did not know what to do. Xiaoxian looked past Yan Shuo and looked at the three people in the house. They were Yan Shuo's wife and children. Then he looked at the small wooden house that was about to collapse. He sighed in his heart. It seemed that this clansman did not have a good life. Moreover, he was a wanderer. Since they were wanderers, it meant that the Yanjiao tribe he was looking for was not here. Xiaoxian did not know what had happened to the other branch, but now was not the time to ask about it. Taking out some jerky from the animal skin bag, Xiaoxian stuffed it into Yan Shuo's hands. Looking at the three people in the house, Xiaoxian signaled Yan Shuo to go and comfort his frightened wife and children. They could no longer stay in Yan Shuo's wooden hut. However, Xiaoxian had the water moon stones in his hands. As long as they paid a little more, they would be able to solve this problem. As for the future, what to do in the future, he would have to discuss it with Yan Shuo later. Yan Shuo's hands trembled as he held the jerky that Xiaoxian had given him. He walked into the house absent-mindedly and almost tripped over the fallen wooden wall. Yan Shuo's wife had already wiped away the tears on her face. She held Yan Shuo's hands tightly and said happily, "It's really here. The Yanjiao tribe is really here." Because their ancestors were all wanderers, Yan Shuo's wife had never thought of joining a tribe. Her situation was different from Yan Shuo's. Their tribe had been exterminated a long time ago, and their fire was truly extinguished. They had become wanderers. But now, Yan Shuo could find the Yanjiao tribe and join it. Naturally, she could also join it. Their difficult days had come to an end. Both husband and wife were very excited. Yan Shuo's wife was the first to react. She wanted to let Xiaoxian into the house, but when she thought of the situation in the house, she felt a little embarrassed. She had also seen Xiaoxian's behavior just now. She always felt very restrained when facing Xiaoxian, who was a real totem warrior. "It's okay. Sisters-in-law, you are busy. I will sit by myself for a while." As he spoke, Xiaoxian looked around. He originally wanted to stack two planks on top of each other to make a stool, but when he saw the wooden thorns on top of each other, he gave up. His line of sight fell on the riverbank 200 meters away. Xiaoxian's mind turned, and he walked over there. When Xiaoxian moved, the surrounding people looked at him at the same time. Their line of sight followed Xiaoxian. They wanted to see what this totem warrior was going to do. Yan Shuo's family also looked at Xiaoxian walking towards the riverbank in confusion. Is he angry? Didn't he just say that he wanted to sit down? Is it because we don't have a place to sit? Yan Shuo's wife said worriedly. It shouldn't be. Yan Shuo didn't think that the people of the Yanjiao tribe would be angry because of such a reason. Yan Shuo handed the remaining jerky to his daughter and looked at Xiaoxian's back. In fact, he was also worried that this tribesman who suddenly appeared would abandon his family. However, looking at the eagle that was still eating the snake and didn't seem to want to leave, Yan Shuo's heart was slightly relieved. Xiaoxian walked towards the riverbank. There was a 2-meter-high and 3-meter-long oval-shaped rock there. Usually, when people came to the riverbank, they would tie the straw rope of the raft to the big rock. Because the rock was too big and heavy, even some totem warriors were too lazy to move it. At this time, some people were sitting on the rock by the riverbank, holding freshly roasted meat in their hands. These were a few people who had just used the stones they found to exchange for food with the traveling team. They were all wanderers, but there were differences in strength. They were considered the stronger ones in the wanderers' residential area, and they were in a group, so the other wanderers didn't dare to offend them. In the wanderers' residential area, they lived the best life, and they were also more domineering. They found fruit trees in the mountains, and they wouldn't let others pick a single fruit. When they saw someone hunting small prey, they would even snatch it. As the saying goes, there is strength in numbers. When these few gathered together, they were also a force to be reckoned with. The other wanderers didn't dare to fight with them, and those who did were already dead. When Xiaofan hit the slave, they also saw it, and they even took pleasure in his misfortune, because they also suffered a lot under the hands of that slave, especially the leader, who secretly fantasized about roasting the snake beside that slave. Wasn't he just a slave? In order to show off his strength, he always had a big snake wrapped around his body, to show that he was stronger than the wanderers. After all, not everyone could bear the weight of that big snake and move freely. Also, with his usual arrogant appearance, did he think that he could pretend to be a slave owner? Therefore, when they saw the slave with the snake being beaten, they were secretly happy. But now, as they watched Xiaofan walk straight towards them, they felt uneasy. "Leader, he is walking towards us," one of them whispered. "I know," the one who was called leader said in a low voice. "What does he want to do? Snatch food?" The Wanderers' district usually encountered people snatching food, so the first thing they thought of was naturally this. He can't be thinking of avenging Yan Shuo, right? They used to find trouble with Yan Shuo, but because Yan Shuo's strength was indeed stronger than the others, he was a tough nut to crack. Usually, Yan Shuo didn't have any conflicts with them, so they were too lazy to spend more time on Yan Shuo. After finding trouble with him a few times, they ignored him. Looking at Xiaofan getting closer and closer, the few of them became more and more uncertain. Then, they did the same thing. They took the meat that wasn't cooked from the fire, and hurriedly stuffed it into their mouths without caring about the heat. This way, the other party wouldn't be able to snatch it, right? Xiaofan walked over, glanced at them, and walked towards the person leaning against the rock. That leader saw Xiaofan walking towards him, and his actions of stuffing the meat became even more hurried, his hands trembling. He could still clearly remember what happened to the snake slave just now. Lowering his head, that leader didn't dare to look at Xiaofan. His cheeks were puffed up, and his mouth was full of meat. He didn't even have time to swallow it before he stuffed another piece into his mouth. He was so full that he couldn't even close his mouth. "Excuse me." That leader heard the voice from above. If it was someone else in the Wanderers' district, they would have already made a move. But looking at the snake slave who was beaten to the point that he couldn't get up from the ground, the leader was conflicted. Should he beat him up, or should he hand over the unfinished meat in his hand? "Don't you have to apologize first?" "Excuse me." The voice from above sounded again. This time, that leader came back to his senses and reacted. He hurriedly moved his butt, but felt that he didn't move far enough, so he moved a little more. He wanted to see how his companions were doing, but when he turned his head, he found that they had already stood up and ran away, looking at him from afar. At this time, these people abandoned their companions so straightforwardly, even if the person in trouble was their leader. Damn it! That leader cursed in his heart, wondering if he should also stand up and run away. He shouldn't anger this person, right? However, before he could get up, he felt that something was wrong. The whispers around him seemed to have quieted down. Did something happen? He felt that the people around him were looking at him strangely. That leader hesitated whether to look back or not. Soon, he found that there was a large shadow on the ground beside him. The shadow was still moving. He turned his neck stiffly and looked over there. Then, he saw that the big rock that they usually couldn't move with their combined strength was easily lifted up by someone. Not only did the person lift it up, but the person also threw the rock up and down, as if he was weighing something. Puff! Cough, cough! He was so agitated that his emotions fluctuated too much. That leader almost spat out all the food that was stuffed in his mouth. And the people who ran away and looked over here all had their cheeks puffed up. Their mouths were open, and they could see that their mouths were stuffed with half-cooked meat. All of them stared with their eyes wide open, as if their eyeballs were about to pop out. In this kind of place where people often moved around, they had seen some totem warriors move big rocks, but they had never seen anyone move it so easily. It was as if what they moved was not a rock, but a small piece of wood. Xiaofan raised his arms and moved the rock over to where Xiaofan and his family were. Midway, because there was a bulge on the ground, Xiaofan directly lifted the rock and jumped over it. The people around him, Yan Shuo's wife, saw that Xiaofan easily moved the big rock over, and her eyelids twitched. She said to Yan Shuo, "Now I believe you when you said that the warriors of the Yanjiao tribe can easily carry a bear. Probably, if a bear was in their hands, it would just be tossed around for fun." Chapter 175. Xiaofan lifted a large stone and quickly walked from the river bank to the door of Yan Shuo's house. He kicked some wooden blocks to the side and threw the stone on the ground. Bang! Even those who stood further away felt the ground shake, not to mention Yan Shuo's family. The close shaking caused another part of the wooden house, which was not very sturdy to begin with, to collapse. He had overdone it. Xiaofan picked his nose and smiled apologetically at Yan Shuo's family. "Cough, about that, I'll help you fix the house later," Xiaofan said. When he was in the tribe, building a big house did not take much time. He followed the people of the Pu tribe and squeezed into a small place only because he thought it was troublesome. He would only stay for 2 or 3 days, so building a house was unnecessary. Moreover, he was unfamiliar with the place, so it was safer and less worrisome to stay in a place arranged for him. However, now that he met people from the same tribe, it was a different story. Yan Shuo's family was not angry at all. Instead, their eyes were shining as they looked at Xiaofan. Xiaofan was strong, so was the tribe. The stronger the tribe, the more stable they could stand in this world and survive for a long time. No wonder their ancestors repeatedly told their children and grandchildren to remember their tribe and wait for the day they returned. Now it seemed that all their efforts were worth it. After Xiaofan threw the stone here, he jumped up and sat down. He waited for Yan Shuo's family to calm down a little before he discussed matters with Yan Shuo. As for moving the large stone in front of everyone, it was only a deterrent. Perhaps it was not much in other places, but here, it was still useful. Looking at the happy atmosphere, Li wanted to reduce his presence as much as possible. He wanted to run as far away as possible. Xiaofan's series of actions had already made him tremble with fear. Looking at the snake slave who was still kneeling there in pain and the broken snake head at his feet, Li took a deep breath and turned to run. However, just as he turned and took a step, a wooden stick broke through the wind and pierced through his chest. The 2 ends of the wood weren't sharpened, but it still forcefully pierced through Ruthless' chest. Before Ruthless could even sense it, he had already been hit. Kneeling on the ground, Li tried his best to keep his eyelids open, wanting to see who threw the wooden stick at him. But all he saw was a ball of golden light slowly approaching from afar. The so-called golden light was naturally not some special luminous object, but the slave owner wearing the golden fur. Yesterday, Xiaofan saw that the slave owner was still wearing a black spotted animal skin. Today, he had changed it again. The golden fur reflected the light of the sun, making the slave owner look quite eye-catching. It seemed that this slave owner liked to use this method to show his nobility. As a slave owner with a lot of slaves and financial resources, there was no shortage of animal skins. Xiaofan learned some information about this slave owner from the other members of the Pu tribe. The slave owner's name was Shu. He had only been here for a few years. Sometimes he would stay here for a while before leaving. Sometimes he would disappear for a long time. He had a lot of people under him, so he didn't need to personally manage them. It was said that the leader of the Pu tribe's traveling team had a good relationship with Shu, so he could get some preferential treatment here. But Xiaoxian felt that when Fan Ning was facing Shu, he was not so natural, and even cautious. Shu was a very dangerous person. The cruelty of a slave owner was something that everyone understood. The smile on the surface was not necessarily true, there could be a knife hidden in the smile. When Shu, who was wearing a dazzling golden outfit, slowly walked over, there was still a smile on his face. It was as if the stick that killed Ruthless was not kicked by him. Beside this slave owner, there were two other people who were also his slaves. However, those two people had a relatively high status among the slaves owned by Shu. They were not comparable to the snake slave that Li Yi brought. While everyone was looking at Shu, who was wearing a dazzling golden outfit, Xiaoxian raised his eyes to the sky. Just now, that slave owner had kicked out more than one stick. In the sky, a long shadow quickly fell from a high place. Puff! The person who had been beaten by Xiaoxian to kneel there, unable to get up, had his throat pierced from behind. He looked at his own blood flowing down the wooden stick, as if he wanted to say something, but his throat could not make any other sound. The chain-like lines that originally appeared on his neck began to disappear from the wound. He raised his arm, wanting to grab the person who walked past him, but found that the distance of less than 5 steps was like a natural moat that could not be touched. He could only watch as that golden ball slowly passed by him. When all the chain-like lines disappeared, the person who often came to the Wanderer area to be arrogant, powerlessly dropped his hand, no longer breathing. The people around only felt a chill go straight to their heads, and their fear of the slave owner deepened. Xiaoxian looked at the slave owner who was walking straight towards him. He was wearing clothes made of linen, much better than the coarse linen that the Pu tribe had. And on Shu's waist, there was also a very fine polished stone axe hanging from a leather rope. The stone axe was not big, the body was flat, the blade was wide, the curve of the arc was a little big, and the 2 corners were slightly upturned. There were also some patterns on the body, and it could be seen that those patterns were very carefully carved. And this kind of carefully crafted stone axe was definitely not used for cutting trees. This kind of autocratic primitive weapon looked like a kind of accessory that hung on the body. In addition, Xiaoxian also felt the movement of the power of inheritance from Shu. The slave owner was like the combination of the chief and the shaman in the tribe. He had absolute leadership and some abilities similar to the shaman. It was just that the slaves under him were not as lucky as the warriors in the tribe. Shu looked at Cha-Cha next to him, then turned back to Xiaoxian and said, "Sorry, the slaves below are not obedient." Obviously, the slave owner had understood the whole story, but he did not attack Xiaoxian as other people thought, nor did he apologize as he said. Instead, he watched Cha-Cha eat the snake with great interest. After watching for a while, the slave owner dressed in glittering gold left with his people, as if he had come just to execute the 2 disobedient slaves. But Xiaoxian guessed that the slave owner's goal was not so. Just now, Shu's eyes stayed on Cha-Cha's feet for a while. Shu's focus should be on the Yanjiao tribe. Could it be that he knew about the Yanjiao tribe? Many slave owners would often travel around the mainland, so maybe he really did know. But, looking at Shu's appearance, he did not intend to say more. Shu left, and the people around him also took away the 2 slaves who were killed. Only the 2 pools of blood on the ground told everyone what had happened here. After leaving the Wanderers area, one of the people who followed Shu asked for the vacant position. "If you killed them, you killed them. Just promote another one." Shu said indifferently. The person next to him respectfully bowed and responded. Shu's answer was as he expected. Maybe the slave owner did not even know the names of the 2 slaves. The ranks of slaves were divided into Li, Fu, Tai, and so on. The slaves below Tai were all inferior slaves. The snake slave was only responsible for raising snakes for the master and got more power, but his rank was still a bit lower than Tai, so it was not worth the slave owner to remember his name. The slave owner naturally did not care about the life and death of the inferior people. After Shi Shu left, Xiao Xian chatted with Yan Shuo. Next, Xiao Xian would definitely go to the central region to inquire about some information. With Yan Shuo's current ability, it was too dangerous to go to the central region. Plus, he still had his wife and children, so Xiao Xian could not bring them all. He did not understand the situation in the central region. He only knew that many people there were very strong. Before the situation was clear, it was not convenient to bring these people. Yan Shuo also knew that it was not good for his family to go to the central region, so he wanted to stay. When Xiao Xian came back from the central region, he would follow. Xiao Xian originally intended to let Yan Shuo live in another place. The slave owner was not easy to get along with. Yan Shuo refused. No need. If the slave owner really wanted to kill people, he would not wait. Just like Li and the others, he would do it on the spot. Since he did not do anything to us, he will not do anything in a short time. Yan Shuo still had some understanding of the slave owner. Moreover, I am more familiar with this place. I also know what kind of people are around here. If we change places, it may not be the same. Yan Shuo said. Xiao Xian thought about it and agreed. He only knew people from the drumming tribe and the Pu tribe here. The Pu tribe would not let people from other tribes stay in their tribe for a long time, and the drumming tribe was too far away. No one would go there. Yan Shuo's family could not go there by themselves. It was too dangerous. After thinking about it, Yan Shuo's idea was more practical. Then you can stay here for the time being. I will help you build a house. With Xiao Xian's help, the new wooden house could be built quickly. The person who came to find Yan Shuo last night was in a daze because of his injuries. He woke up very late today. When he woke up, he heard others talking about Yan Shuo and hurried over. As a comrade who had fought together, Yan Shuo also wanted to help him. Before the other party went to find the slave owner, he would let him stay with them. The new house was bigger than the previous one, so it was possible for one more person to live in it. Xiao Xian also felt that it was feasible. With more people, they could take care of each other. When I come back from the central region, I will bring you back to the tribe. Xiao Xian left some water moon stones for Yan Shuo, and also made some stone tools for him. Compared to before, Yan Shuo's strength was a little stronger now. It was absolutely possible for him to make a living, and maybe he could even hunt a lot of prey. On the day the Pu tribe left, Xiao Xian temporarily bid farewell to Yan Shuo's family. He followed the expanded travel team and continued to head to the central region. According to Yan Shuo, he was not sure what happened to the tribe that year, but he knew that there should be many wanderers like him. If he could find these people, Xiao Xian could bring them back to the tribe. Chapter 176. When they set off again, the team had expanded. In addition to the people from the Pu tribe, there were also travel teams from other tribes. After the team expanded, it became more lively. Xiao Xian could also hear a lot of gossip from other tribes. When he was resting, he would also ask people about some things. After a few days, Xiao Xian learned a lot of new information. Xiao Xian had a map in his hands. He had drawn it himself. The map left by the ancestors could no longer be used. After nearly 1,000 years, the mountains had become plains, plains had become mountains and rivers. The changes were too great. The composition and distribution of the tribes had also changed greatly. Xiao Xian needed to draw a new map to bring back, so that the tribe would not have difficulty crossing the river. At this moment, an experienced traveler was talking to Xiao Xian, telling him what he had seen in the past. At first, we did not take this road, but took another one. Later, there was a war between the tribes, and it has not subsided yet. We temporarily changed to this one. The river on that route was much wider than this one, and there were two colors. There was a tribe beside the river. They were very good at making rafts. The rafts over there were the biggest and sturdiest ones I have ever seen. It would be great if we could also have a wooden raft like that. The man recalled, his eyes filled with envy. Seeing Xiaoxian's puzzled face, the man gestured to Xiaoxian and explained in detail the biggest and sturdiest rafts he had mentioned. After listening to the other person's description, Xiaoxian paused and said, "Is that a boat?" "Yes, yes, they call it a boat." The man continued to recall, talking about what he had seen. Only, a few years had passed, and many of his memories were vague. Xiaoxian memorized these. If he had time, he wanted to go there and have a look. When the time came, the people of the tribe would need a boat to cross the river. Without metal, how to make a big boat, Xiaoxian was not sure. It would be best if he could learn some technology from there. I remember that there are also many tourists over there. Another traveler was unwilling to be left out and came over to chat. It seems so, but it's just to help resist the tree and chop the wood. Hey, I heard that the slave owner also went there and took away a lot of slaves. The previous person said. In order to increase the number of slaves under their command, the slave owners would always go to some places to get people. Those wanderers who had lost their fire seeds or whose tribes had been destroyed were the favorite targets of the slave owners. However, they would not immediately go to those wanderers after their tribes were destroyed. Instead, they would wait for 1 or 2 years for the wanderers to see the situation clearly. They would only go to those wanderers when they were close to despair after suffering setbacks. At that time, some wanderers who had suffered a lot would not only not avoid the slave owners, but would also take the initiative to stick to them. Just like ruthlessness. In order to get more slaves, the slave owners would move around, and Shu, whom Xiaoxian had met before, was the same. When Xiaoxian listened to the two people, he learned about some of the places Shu had been before. Xiaoxian secretly remembered those places. He suspected that Shu had seen people like Yan Shua, or had seen the totem patterns of the Yanjiao tribe. He didn't know if it was possible that he had seen it when he was looking for slaves. No matter what, Xiaoxian intended to look for it when they passed by those places. After all, according to the words passed down by Yan Shua's ancestors, there should be a lot of wanderers scattered everywhere. After all these years, if one generation after another lived, there should be a lot of people. The Yanjiao tribe on the other side of the river did not have a large population. If they wanted to expand, the first thing to do was to call back the scattered Yanjiao tribesmen. In addition to those places, there are a lot of wanderers on the grassland we have to pass through. Slave owners often go there. A traveler said. Xiaoxian looked at the area that was not completely drawn on the map. That was the grassland. The travel team would not go deep, and would only pass by the border of the grassland. There were a lot of tribes on the grassland, and the people there were also very tough. The travel team generally would not go deep. Just as they were talking, Yu suddenly said, "Look in front." Xiaoxian's line of sight left the map and looked at the water in front of them. On the water in front of them, there were some people floating, and each of them had fatal wounds. "Is there a war in front?" someone asked. It seems that the scale is not small. The people around them were talking, and the leaders of several travel teams also gathered together to discuss. Finally, they decided to rest on the shore for the time being. "Let's take a break first. Send some people to scout ahead. If there is a battle between tribes, we will avoid it first, or wait for it to end before we set off," one of the people in front said. The people on the raft paddled. After the raft reached the shore, Xiaoxian and the people around him spontaneously tied the raft to a tree or a big rock on the shore. They also took their own bags with them. No one put anything on the raft, because they did not know when they would have to abandon the raft to escape. After all, this was not their own tribe. Especially in a place where there was a war, it was especially dangerous. It was easy to get caught in the crossfire. Each of the leaders sent a dozen or so people to scout the situation at the front. Xiaofan, let's go and see if there are any wild beasts around. We can hunt one and eat it. You said. When they were resting, the people in the team could hunt nearby, as long as they did not go too far. If they went too far and the team did not see anyone, they would not wait. Okay. Xiaofan said to the people next to him. If the team set off, he would let them greet them. After leaving the tribe, Xiaofan ate less fearsome beasts. Generally, they only hunted wild beasts, and these people did not go to places where there were fearsome beasts. He kind of missed fearsome beast meat. He did not know where Cha-Cha had gone to hunt. That guy had high requirements for food and did not like ordinary wild beasts. However, Cha-Cha had never been left behind. Even if it left temporarily, it could quickly catch up with the team. Xiaofan was not worried about it. Look, there's a deer over there. You pointed in a direction and said excitedly. Then he quickly took out his hair dryer and used the poisonous thorn as an arrow. He put it in and carefully approached the deer. He had to hurry. Otherwise, if the other members of the travel team got there first, there would be no food. You quietly approached the deer, and Xiaofan followed. However, Xiaofan felt that there was something wrong with the surroundings. It was not necessarily a crisis, but something seemed to have happened. He was more careful when he sneaked around. When he was about the same distance away from the deer, you pointed the end of the blowpipe towards the deer and put the other end into his mouth. While he was blowing, his cheeks puffed up. Whoosh! The speed of the arrow was very fast, and the arrow that was blown out accurately hit the deer. The poison in the arrow needles was not a lethal poison, but a very powerful paralyzing poison. When a deer was shot, the arrow needles would pierce through the deer's skin, and the poison would spread. After the deer felt that it was being attacked, it wanted to run away quickly. However, after taking 2 steps, it staggered and fell to the ground after a few steps. Hey! It's done! Yu was very excited. He was about to go and collect the prey, but he was stopped by Xiaofan. What's wrong? Yu looked at Xiaofan in confusion. Xiaofan did not answer. Instead, he raised his chin in a direction. Yu looked over. In the woods not far from the deer, some birds flew up. They were probably alarmed by the deer's running and falling. What's wrong with those birds? Yu still did not understand. He thought about it and said helplessly, You don't want to eat those birds, do you? Although those birds are not too small, they are not easy to catch. Why would we eat those birds when we have a deer? Xiaofan looked at Yu in silence for a few seconds and said, Those are scavenger birds. Scavenger birds? They eat corpses. Xiaofan pointed over there are quite a few of them. Because of the deer's movement, some birds were startled, but Xiaofan believed that it was only a small part of them. There were many that did not fly at all. The birds that flew up just now quickly flew back down. If there was no food to attract them, why would they stay on the ground? Yu's face turned serious, and he put away the hair dryer. He did not care about the deer. Compared to his life, food could be put aside first. Because of the direction of the wind, when they came over, they did not smell anything strange. In addition, there were many flowers blooming near the river bank. The fragrance of the flowers interfered with the sense of smell, so they did not notice it at first. Let's go and take a look. Yu said. Before Xiaofan could answer, Yu had already taken out his stone knife and went over. Xiaofan looked around and did not see anyone else for the time being, so he also followed. They were getting closer and closer. Because of the dense trees, they could not see the situation there. However, as they got closer, Xiaofan could already smell the unpleasant smell. In addition, there were also the sounds of the scavenger birds pecking at food. Probably because there were too many of them fighting with each other. Carefully pushing aside the branches in front of them, Xiaofan saw the source of the smell. Dead people, a lot of dead people. Compared to those floating on the river, there were more here. Moreover, because there was no river water to wash them, there was a layer of red blood on the ground. Their clothes were similar to those on the river, so they should be from the same tribe. Looking at the situation, it was obvious that they had been slaughtered. These people, Yu was about to say something when he suddenly found that there was an arm moving in the pile of dead people. There's still someone alive? Hearing Yu's voice, the person who was pressed down struggled and pushed the person on top away, revealing a face full of blood. There was only one wound on his body, but it was almost fatal. Most of the others had fatal wounds on their bodies. The birds that were pecking on the ground flew up when they sensed the presence of the living people, but some gluttonous birds stayed on the ground. Help, help me. The man did not care about the birds pecking around him and crawled towards Yu and Xiaofan. Yu frowned and took a step back. He did not know these people, and he did not want to get involved in the struggle between tribes. He was just a traveler, not looking for trouble. Let's leave. Before Yu could finish, there was a whoosh. Pucci. The man who was crawling towards them was pierced by a spear and nailed to the ground. Xiaofan raised his head and looked in one direction. There was a person standing on a tree. A man wearing a mask. Chapter 177. The man standing on the branch was wearing animal skin without fur. It was a skin that had been treated more carefully. The stripes on the animal skin looked very similar to the forest. Dark green and light green intertwined. If he hid his breath in the forest, it would be very difficult to be discovered. This kind of clothing was not a special case. When the temperature was a little warmer, Xiaofan had seen many people wearing this kind of animal skin. The most special thing about the man on the branch was the mask on his face. At first glance, it looked like they were wearing masks with patterns on them. However, in reality, the masks were part of their facial bones. As for the patterns on the masks, they were totem patterns that appeared due to their totem power. An invisible murderous aura spread. The surrounding birds that were pecking at the carrion also rushed to flap their wings and leave. There were many birds gathered in the pile of corpses. When these birds flew up at the same time, it was like opening a black curtain. The figure on the other side was also faintly discernible. Yu swallowed his saliva and clenched his stone knife. The tip of the knife unconsciously pointed in that direction, guarding against the person who appeared. When did the person appear? He did not notice at all. At the same time, a human figure jumped down from a high place and split open the black curtain formed by the scavenger birds with lightning speed. He went straight for Qi and slashed down with his saber. There was no superfluous movement. It was just one knife. But this knife made you feel as if there were tens of thousands of knives chopping down on his head. The power from this knife came in an instant. It seemed that no matter where he hid, this stone knife would chase after him. Yu's expression froze. His body seemed to be in a quagmire. He wanted to struggle, but his body did not listen to him. He struggled and wanted to escape, but it was already impossible. At this moment, Yu regretted. He was very regretful. Why did he come here? Couldn't he just leave with the deer? Before leaving the tribe, what did his grandfather say? Don't be too curious. If you find something strange, you should leave far away. Yu smelled the clearest scent of death in his life. Perhaps in the next moment, he would be like those people in the pile of corpses. He would be chopped in half and thrown here to become food for the scavenger birds hovering in the sky. Suddenly, a hand grabbed his shoulder and quickly dragged him back. A very sharp stone knife appeared above his head and blocked the knife that was coming down on his head. The two sides collided without any fancy moves. At the place where they collided, fine fragments of the stone knife flew everywhere. Under the saber chi from both sides, Chi's heart pounded wildly. He felt as if he had just survived a calamity. However, he also knew that now was not the time to think about it. If it were not for Xiaofan, he would have ended up like those people in the pile of corpses. Standing here, he could not help, so he quickly moved back a few steps to make more space for Xiaofan. Although the other side's momentum was very strong, Yu was stunned by this sudden momentum and could not react immediately. However, Xiaofan was a hunter who often fought with those ferocious beasts in the forest. He had also faced ferocious beasts that were good at hiding and attacking. Naturally, he could cope with it. He held the handle of the stone knife with one hand, and after the other hand got rid of Yu, he used his palm to support the back of the knife. Holding the knife with both hands, he blocked the opponent's sudden attack. If it was an ordinary stone knife, it would probably be broken in an instant. However, the knife in Xiaofan's hand was given to him by the shaman. It was also one of the stone tools that he brought back from the King Stoneworm's territory when he found his ancestors. Before he left the tribe, the shaman asked someone to polish it and give it to Xiaofan. When he left the tribe, among the knives he took, except for the teeth knife that old Ku had polished again, this was the only one he took. The teeth knife had been damaged and polished several times, so it had shrunk a lot. However, this stone knife was a little bigger. When he fought with others, Xiaofan always used this knife. The moment he blocked the knife, Xiaofan felt a strong saber chi pass through the stone knife and hit his arms. However, Xiaofan was not afraid. With the totemic pattern on his arms, he pushed the opponent away. The man who was pushed away quickly retreated until he reached the tree where he had been standing. He stared at Xiaofan, his eyes showing confusion and surprise under the mask. When Yu was thinking about whether to take out the stinger from the animal skin bag, the masked man quickly left and did not attack them again. After carefully sensing the surroundings, Yu let out a long sigh of relief. From the opponent's sudden attack to Xiaofan blocking the opponent, the moment of silence, the two sides separated and the opponent left. All of this happened in the time of a breath. Yu thought that if he could master how to use the frog poison, he would have the ability to protect himself. Now it seemed that he was still too inexperienced. Many times, when there was absolute power, there was no time for him to use poison. Yu could still clearly remember that when the knife came down on his head, he had nowhere to run. It was as if all the blood in his body had been frozen. Scared me to death. Yu breathed heavily. He did not mind the rotten smell here. Even if it was worse, it was still better than death. Thank you, Xiaofan. If not for you, I would be like those people. Yu said. He did not expect that Xiaofan would be so powerful. He thought that this person who appeared with the drumming tribe was just an unknown tribesman. He did not expect that although he was younger than him, his strength was stronger than him. No wonder before they left, his grandfather told him to follow Xiaofan, but not the other Pu tribe people. It seemed that the old man had already seen who was strong and who was weak. Sure enough, in terms of eyesight, he was not as good as the old man at home. Let's leave quickly. Xiaofan looked at the scavenger birds flying down and said. Yes, let's leave quickly. Yu turned and ran. After running a few steps, he turned and ran towards the place where the deer was. The poison on the arrows from the blowpipe was too strong. The deer was still lying there. Yu did not care about killing the deer. He dragged the deer and left. He just wanted to leave this place filled with the smell of death. No wonder those people in the traveling team would quickly avoid the tribal war. They would really be implicated. When he finally saw the team resting on the shore and met people moving around, Yu slowed down his pace. At this time, he remembered his doubts and looked at Xiaofan. Say, which tribe did that person come from? The other side is very strong. Xiaofan thought about the other side's mask and said, 1,000 faces. According to Xiaofan's knowledge, there was only one tribe like this. It was also the first tribe that Xiaofan had seen. It was recorded in the animal skin scroll passed down by the ancestors of the Yinjiao tribe, the 1,000 Faces tribe. According to the records of the ancestors, after the totem warriors in this tribe awakened, they would form a mask with their own characteristics. That kind of mask was actually the special bone structure of the face when using the totem power, covering the whole face. Everyone in the 1,000 Faces tribe wore different masks. Even if they looked the same, there would be some small differences. It was like there were no two identical leaves in the world. In the 1,000 Faces tribe, some people's masks were very ferocious, like evil spirits. Some people's masks were very ordinary, or looked very peaceful. Some wore smiles, some wore anger. There were thousands of people, and thousands of different masks. This was the 1,000 Faces tribe. The totem pattern of the 1,000 Faces tribe was a strange mask. Xiaofan had seen it on the wall of a cave near the mountain foot of the Yinjiao tribe. Behind the wall of the cave, the pattern of a human face mask was the totem symbol of the 1,000 Faces tribe. 1,000 Faces? Hearing this term, you didn't react for a moment. But after thinking for a while, he recalled some things. His face was full of shock. The 1,000 Faces tribe? The 1,000 Faces tribe was too far away for the Pu tribe who had always lived in the border areas. But you had heard many people talk about the 1,000 Faces tribe. Although it was just some rumors, and many of them were exaggerated, it was undeniable that the 1,000 Faces tribe was a powerful tribe. How did those people who were killed offend the 1,000 Faces tribe? I remember that on the map they drew, the 1,000 Faces tribe was still a bit far from here. If there wasn't a big matter, they wouldn't come here. You guessed that this tribal war was actually a one-sided massacre. Who knows? Xiaofan said absent-mindedly. To be remembered by the ancestors of the Yinjiao tribe, and to be drawn on the wall, a tribe had to be at the same level as the Yinjiao tribe. If the difference in strength was too great, the ancestors wouldn't have had such an attitude. Since you said that the 1,000 Faces tribe was a powerful tribe here, and had always been very famous, then, was the Yinjiao tribe at the same level as the 1,000 Faces tribe in the past? Now Xiaofan still didn't know. Nearly 1,000 years had passed. Some tribes had died out, and new ones had appeared. The prosperous ones had declined, and the declining ones had died. There were also tribes that grew from weak to strong, and tribes like the 1,000 Faces tribe had always been powerful. It was just that no one remembered the Yinjiao tribe. This was really a sad thing. If the ancestors of the tribe who had passed away knew about this, it was not known whether they would cry and crawl out of the fire pit. Not long after Xiaofan and you returned to the traveling team, the people who had been sent out by the leaders to inquire about the situation also came back. I heard that the tribe that was slaughtered robbed the fire crystals of the 1,000 Faces tribe. They also killed a few children of the 1,000 Faces tribe who were alone. They were chased to their nest, and the whole tribe was slaughtered. Even the fire seed was completely extinguished. Tut, how dare they provoke the 1,000 Faces tribe? That's right. Aren't they looking for death? When we meet people from big tribes, even if they are children, we don't dare to offend them. Probably, those people thought that they could do it secretly, but they didn't expect that it would bring about a disaster. Or maybe, they had thought about it, but greed always made them risk their lives. Listening to the discussion around him, Xiaofan had a different feeling. Many people didn't dare to provoke a powerful tribe, even if they were children with weak fighting abilities. After all, things like today were rare. Most people had the same idea as the travelers. This was the influence of a big tribe. Just by hearing its name and seeing its totem, people were afraid. Chapter 178. Because of the revenge massacre of the Thousand Masks tribe, the travelers discussed for a long time. Even when they set off again, they continued to talk about similar things over the years. This allowed Xiaofan to obtain some new information. Not to mention, other than the Thousand Masks tribe, there were a few other tribes that were recorded in the animal skin rolls left behind by their ancestors. Xiaofan marked the animal skin rolls according to the information he obtained, then carefully rolled them up and put them away. These were all to be brought back to the Yanjiao tribe. If the Yanjiao tribe returned, would they be able to regain their former glory? Xiaofan was looking forward to that day. Xiaofan and Yu did not mention to the others that they had encountered the Thousand Masks tribe. After traveling on the river for another 2 days, the traveling group abandoned the wooden raft and changed to walking. This was because it was inconvenient to use wooden rafts to travel further. Although there was also a river, it was not as fast as walking. Later on, they had to go to higher places. The area in front of them was located at a higher elevation. It was said that there were endless grasslands and snowy mountains. It sounded like some places in the hunting area of the Yanjiao tribe. The grasslands were very large, and there were many large and small tribes scattered there. Wars often broke out between the tribes there. The traveler team would not go deep into the grasslands, nor would they get involved in matters related to war. They were just passing through the grasslands and would exchange things with the tribes there. At this time of the year, the grass on the grasslands was green. Walking along the river and stepping onto the grasslands, Xiaofan looked around. The sky was high and the air was cool. The grass was green, and there were some small flowers that he could not name blooming on the grasslands. They had a faint fragrance. Looking ahead, the green grasslands stretched as far as the eye could see. In addition to the river that crossed the grasslands beside Xiaofan, there were many small lakes scattered across the grasslands. The lake water reflected the blue sky. Among them, there were also some smaller rivers that passed through the large and small lakes. The water was clear, and there were some small fish swimming quickly. This is the grasslands. If we go a little further, we will enter the Feng tribe. An experienced traveler next to Xiaofan said. The Feng tribe was one of the tribes on the grassland. The team of travelers happened to pass by the Feng tribe. The Feng tribe was already familiar with the traveling team. They had been on this path for many years, and both sides had long understood each other. For the people of the Feng tribe, the tribes of the travelers were too far away from here. They didn't have the problem of fighting for territory with them. The long distance posed no threat to them. What's more, every time these travelers passed by, they could take out some of their tribe's products to exchange with the travelers. Many people in the tribe liked this kind of trade. They didn't need to leave the tribe to exchange for some rare things. It was simple and convenient. For the travelers, they could exchange things and pass through the grassland under the protection of the Feng tribe. This was a win-win situation. Therefore, they didn't mind taking a step back during the exchange. Where are the people of the Feng tribe? I don't see anything. Yu looked around and said. They don't live here, but this is their sphere of influence. Sometimes, the Feng tribe will send people here to patrol. If we walk a little further, we should be able to meet the patrol team. The person next to him said. The Feng tribe's territory is so big. Yu said with emotion. This is big? If you see the real big tribes on the grassland, won't your eyes pop out? The person next to him laughed. Many tribes on the grassland raise some cattle, sheep, horses, and so on. They also hunt, but there aren't many prey here. Most of the time, they eat those raised animals. And those raised animals need to eat grass. The grass on the grassland is for those raised animals. If there isn't enough grass, they won't be able to raise many animals. Without raised animals, there would be no source of food. Naturally, the tribe wouldn't have a good life. Listening to the person next to him, Yu nodded in understanding. Most of the grassland here was not dense forest. There weren't many beasts living here, unlike their Pooh tribe. Even if they didn't have the things brought back by the travelers, they could still find food in the surrounding forest. As they were talking, Xiaofan heard a rumbling sound. The ground under his feet also trembled. Someone is coming. Don't worry, it's the Feng tribe's patrol team. By the way, do you know that there are many tribal warriors on the grassland who ride horses? Ride horses? Yu had only eaten horse meat. He really hadn't ridden before. Xiaofan and the other travelers looked in the direction of the sound. Over there were some large mounds that were covered with green grass. As the rumbling sound got closer and closer, at the place where the mounds met the blue sky, a figure emerged. Soon, more figures appeared in everyone's line of sight. The patrol team had 12 or 20 people patrolling everywhere. Sometimes, they moved in large groups. Not all of them were members of the patrol team. Most of them were other members of the tribe. The people of the tribe wouldn't stay in the place all day long. When they were free, they would ride horses and gallop in groups on the grassland. Hundreds and thousands of horses galloped down from the huge green mound towards the group of travelers, bringing with them a majestic aura. When the horses approached the traveling team, they began to slow down. In the midst of neighing and whistling, the horses gradually stopped and surrounded the traveling team. Several team leaders of the traveling team also knew the leader of the group. They greeted him with a warm smile and chatted with him. They also threw him some rare things on the grassland that they had exchanged on the way. The leader of the Feng tribe took the things and said, "Many people in our tribe have been waiting. A few days ago, someone asked when you would come. Today, we finally see you." Seeing the traveling team, the people of the Feng tribe were very happy. Some of them shouted that they wanted to go back immediately to prepare the items they wanted to exchange. Others controlled the speed of their horses and followed the traveling team. As they walked back to the tribe, they asked the traveling team what new things they had. A young man even chatted with you. He was very interested in the frog poison that you had brought. He also asked you to teach him how to use those poisonous stingers. Xiaofan chatted with the leader of the Feng tribe's patrol team about the cha-cha. The leader of the patrol team was called Bei. Seeing the eagle in the sky, Bei stopped looking down on Xiaofan. Bei didn't have the same fear as the Pooh tribe's leader, Guangho. They didn't reject cha-cha, this giant eagle. As long as it didn't attack the beasts raised by the tribe, they were quite happy to let cha-cha fly over their tribe. Because every day, there were many big birds in the sky that took away the livestock raised by the tribe, and the Feng tribe didn't have their own trained eagles to defend themselves. Usually, they could only make some artificial defenses. Bei didn't expect that there would be a person with a giant eagle in the traveling team. He also became more enthusiastic about Xiaofan. Seeing Xiaofan walking together with the people of the Pooh tribe, and that they were quite familiar with each other, Bei thought that Xiaofan was also from the Pooh tribe. It was just that he didn't have the painting on his eyes. They weren't very curious about other tribes. They had been here before, and now that they were familiar with each other, there was nothing new. After all, they were just passers-by. In the traveling team, there were also some people from the Pooh tribe. After leaving the tribe, they temporarily wiped off the painting on their eyes. In this way, Xiaofan became less conspicuous. The traveling team followed the people of the Feng tribe to the Feng tribe's encampment. It was already late, and the traveling team couldn't just leave after trading. After walking so far, they took advantage of this opportunity to stay in the Feng tribe for 2 days and rest. After passing through the grasslands, they would enter the central region. At that time, they wouldn't have so much time to rest. The grasslands were beautiful, and they could hear many people singing. There were also some children playing and fishing by the river and lake. Around them, there were adults and children riding horses. It looked peaceful. It was impossible to imagine that this tribe had fought with another tribe not long ago. Not long after, Xiaofan saw some houses made of animal skin, grass, and wood not far away. Some of them looked like tents. "Tonight, we'll rest here. This place is for you to rest." Bei pointed to a row of simple wooden houses and said. Although there were many wooden houses, there were also many people in the team. They had to squeeze in. Xiaofan, Yu, and the others entered the house together. After tidying up a little, Xiaofan looked at the other places of the Feng tribe from the window. In some wooden fences, there were many strange-looking cattle and sheep. Perhaps they were the wild domesticated breeds of the grasslands. They were different from the cattle and sheep Xiaofan had seen before. Further away, there were also some people who were herding herds of cattle and sheep back home. Right, didn't they say that the tribes on the grasslands would also take in some wanderers? Where do they live? Xiaofan asked several experienced people next to him. The wanderers don't live here. This is where the people of the Feng tribe live. Sometimes they entertain guests here. But other than that, the wanderers live over there. The man said, pointing in one direction. Xiaofan looked in the direction he was pointing. There was a big green mound there, and on the other side of the mound, there were tourists. Although the people of the Feng tribe usually asked the wanderers for help and gave them a small reward, they were still on guard. Over the hills, Xiaofan could see some mountains that were not very high. The peaks of the mountains were covered with green. There weren't many trees, and most of them were grasslands and stones. Further away, he could vaguely see some mountains with white peaks. That was the territory of other tribes. Hearing that the travel team had come, many people of the Feng tribe brought things to trade with the travel team. Xiaofan didn't want to trade. He had hunted a cow on the way, and there was still a lot of roasted meat left. The remaining water moonstones would be used in the central region. However, when Xiaofan was bored on the raft, he used some animal bones and horns to polish and carve some things. He had 2 bone knives and several bone ornaments carved into various ferocious beasts. A middle-aged man traded them for a leg of lamb. That man liked these things very much, so he traded them for his children. When the sky gradually darkened, fewer people came to trade. After eating, the people of the travel tribe went to rest. Looking at the dark sky, Xiaofan planned to go to the place where the wanderers lived tomorrow. He had a feeling that he could find the person he was looking for here. Chapter 179. The sun rose. It seemed to be another day similar to yesterday, but for some people on the grassland, it was different. For example, the people of the Feng tribe who wanted to exchange things with the traveling team were thinking about what to take and what to exchange. For example, the people who had been guarding against the sky could rest today. Usually, there would be big birds flying over and taking away their livestock, but today, there was a bigger bird in the sky instead of those figures that usually gave them headaches. Another example was an old man who lived in the wanderer area of the Feng tribe. For old he, today was a special day. Every year on this day, he would come to the top of the mountain, facing a direction, praying and singing. He didn't know when it started, but his ancestors had set such a rule. Every year on this day, he would come here to pray and sing, to remember the words that had been passed down from a long time ago, as well as the name of the tribe that no one knew. Old he was also used to coming here every year at this time to inherit the will of his ancestors and fulfill their wishes. Every time this happened, that magical dream would appear in old he's mind. Every detail was very clear, including the rising flames and the 2 horns surrounded by flames. It seemed to be the same as what his ancestors had said. Sometimes, he couldn't even tell whether it was a dream or reality, his imagination or reality. Did the tribe still exist? Every time he had such doubts, he would stand here praying and singing to strengthen his beliefs. Many wanderers didn't understand his behavior, and some people would pity him, but he didn't care. He just insisted and liked to sing like this. Every time, he would forget all the depression and troubles, throw away other worries, and sing for a whole day here. Today, as in previous years, he went up the mountain with a straw bag filled with barbecue and a kettle. The mountains in the territory of the Feng tribe were not high. This was already the highest place. He wanted to go to the top of a higher mountain, but it was not the territory of the Feng tribe. He would probably be killed as an intruder before he could reach the top, not to mention that it was not the territory of the Feng tribe. Standing on the top of the green mountain, he took a deep breath, and just like in previous years, he sang loudly. His singing spread from the top of the mountain to other places. Some people nearby also heard it, but they didn't care at all. Every day, there would be people singing. As for what they were singing and how well they were singing, they did not care at all and continued to do their own things. Since the beginning of the world, our ancestors have been here. When the tribe rose, hunting was the priority. As the spring warmed up, the ice and snow disappeared. The birds and beasts jumped happily, and the birds sang and the beasts roared. The hunters went far away. He stood alone on the top of the mountain, facing one direction. As he sang, he suddenly heard a second voice. Someone had joined him in singing the same song as him. The song he sang was the hunting song passed down from his ancestors, and it was the only song he knew. He hadn't even learned the songs the people of the Feng tribe often sang. Because he only knew this song, he often sang it when everyone sang. Even if some people around him didn't know how to sing, they could still sing a few lines with him. However, for some reason, the songs sung by others and by he were obviously the same, but they gave people a completely different feeling. The former sang as if they were mourning, and the more they sang, the more sorrowful they became. On the other hand, the more the latter sang, the more high-pitched and in high spirits. Perhaps only the people of the Yanjiao tribe could sing such a sad song so heroically. Therefore, at first, when he heard someone singing with him, he just thought it was someone nearby. He didn't turn around, but still stood there and continued to sing. But soon, he found that the other party could actually sing such a long song. Not only that, the other party sang better than him. As for why he could recognize it, was there a need to ask? The other party's singing was not as sad as the others at all. On the contrary, it made he feel more excited. Obviously, some of the tones were different from what he remembered, but he had a feeling that this was how the song should be sung. The other party was right behind him. He wanted to turn around and see who it was, and ask where it was from. However, he didn't look back. He had to finish singing this song, or it would be disrespectful to his ancestors. In order to hunt, you travel day and day, deep into the mountain. You come back from hunting with no empty baggage. You have the ability to recognize the tracks of beasts. As he sang, he was immersed in that wonderful state again. He saw a pair of flaming horns, which seemed to be close at hand, but couldn't be touched. He always felt that it was still a little bit away. After singing the whole hunting song, he still hadn't recovered from that state. After waiting for about half an hour, he gradually came back to his senses. Thinking of the person who had just sung with him, he turned around and saw a young man he had never seen before. "Hey, which family are you from? Why are you here?" he asked. "Huh?" Xiaofan was even more puzzled. "Have you seen someone like me? Who are you? What's your name?" He drank some water and asked. "My name is Xiaofan." After thinking for a while, Xiaofan added, "I'm from the Yanjiao tribe." He glanced at Xiaofan, and his eyes seemed to say, "You said nonsense." After drinking water and resting for a while, he called Xiaofan, "No matter where you're from, come and sing with me again." Xiaofan. "That's it?" After experiencing Yan Shua's strong and excited reaction, Xiaofan really didn't know how to deal with such a calm person. So, he went over and sang with old he again. After singing for the second time, old he sat on the ground and rested for a while. "Where are you from?" old he asked at this time. "I came here with the traveling team over there," Xiaofan answered. "Hey! You're not afraid of danger. Those traveling teams don't have good tempers. You should have met good people this time," old he said. "Why did you have to face that direction when you were singing?" Xiaofan asked. "You don't know?" old he looked at Xiaofan with reproachful eyes. "That's the old land of our tribe. Remember, don't forget it in the future." After chatting with old he for a while, Xiaofan knew the reason why old he came here to sing. It seemed that every person in the Yanjiao tribe was very persistent. They lived in their own way and kept the beliefs in their hearts. Old he's son was gone, his daughter-in-law ran away, and his wife stayed at home to take care of his sick grandson. It was the only day in a year that old he would come here to sing. Last year, he also came here with his grandson. Unfortunately, his grandson was seriously ill these days, so old he came here alone. When he sang, he also prayed to his ancestors, hoping that they would bless his little grandson so that he could recover. Many people on the prairie got sick and died. After resting for a while, old he began to sing again. He also pulled Xiaofan to sing with him. He always felt that when he sang with Xiaofan, it was particularly exciting. It was a kind of blood-boiling passion, like a hunting warrior who was about to go to war. Xiaofan sang with the old man over and over again. The sun rose and gradually began to set before old he really stopped singing. After singing, it was time to go back. Old he went down the mountain with Xiaofan. He also asked Xiaofan about his next plan. When he heard that Xiaofan wanted to go to the central region, old he didn't agree. "It's too far and too dangerous. You're just a boy with no ability. How can you go to the central region with those travelers? The central region is more dangerous than other places. I advise you to go back to where you used to live. Maybe you can't live well, but at least you can stay alive. Only when you're alive can you have hope. You look quite strong, so I guess you must have a good life. If you really can't find a place to stay, you can stay with me. Life on the grassland is difficult, but it's much better than those drifting around." Old he persuaded. "It's all right. Don't worry. I can protect myself," Xiaofan said. "Young man, don't think that you can run around just because you're strong. Although we're strong, we're still very weak compared to those totem warriors." "But I'm a totem warrior." "What?" "I said, I'm a totem warrior, and an intermediate one. Hey, be careful." Before Xiaofan finished his words, he saw the old man's foot twist and roll down the mountain. If Xiaofan hadn't quickly caught him, old he would have probably rolled farther, and even hit those protruding stones. Old he was carried back from the mountain by Xiaofan. His foot was sprained, but fortunately, there were no other injuries. Old he's wife was taking care of her grandson at home. When she saw Xiaofan carrying the old man back, she hurriedly went up to check on his injury. "It's all right. It's just a sprained foot." "Hey, Xiaofan, hurry up. Where were we? Go on. Who else is in the tribe? What did the shaman teach you?" Old he didn't answer his wife's question, nor did he care about the injury on his foot. He just let Xiaofan continue talking about the Yanjiao tribe. After putting old he on the wooden bed and applying medicine, Xiaofan said, "I thought you already knew. You were so calm. How would I know that you really came from the Yanjiao tribe? I thought you were a wanderer." Speaking of this, old he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had misunderstood. In the past, when several tribes on the grassland had friendly exchanges, he would go with them and see wanderers like him. They would tell each other their troubles, then come back and continue their lives. Everyone hoped that one day they could return to the tribe, but generation after generation, from birth to death, this wish was not realized. He once thought that maybe this was the end of his life. His grandfather, his grandfather's grandfather, and some of his ancestors had all lived on the grassland, helping the tribes here. He didn't know how long they had lived here. The only thing he still had was the words passed down from generation to generation, the things he needed to know. Because we have lived here for a long time, we are good people, we are strong, and we work hard. The people of the tribe are a little lenient with us, like the people of the Feng tribe. Sometimes they even let me help with the herding. So, don't worry, we can still hold on. Wait for the day when the tribe comes back. You know how to herd? Xiaofan asked. Yes, I've been doing this for a long time. Do you know how to raise those animals? Xiaofan asked again. Of course I know how to. Those of us who live on the grassland all know how to do it. Xiaofan thought to himself, what a talent. If it were the people on the other side of the river, the animals would be in the pot. Chapter 180. Xiaofan applied the medicine to old He's wound. The medicine he applied was made by himself, from the herbs he picked during the rest of the journey. Old He's grandson looked only about 6 years old, but in fact, he was almost 8 years old. He was thin and small. Because he caught a cold, he was sleeping after taking the medicine. Xiaofan also brought some herbs from the tribe to strengthen the body. He gave some to old He. Totem warriors can use these herbs directly. When you drink it, put less herbs at a time, but add more water. People who hadn't awakened their totem power, like the children in the Yanjiao tribe, were weak. Drinking these herbs could make them feel better, or at least strengthen their resistance. In fact, I also have some herbs here. Take them with you. Although you're a totem warriors can get hurt sometimes. These herbs are good for you. Old He asked his wife to pack some herbs for Xiaofan. There were only 2 elders and 1 child in old He's family. Xiaofan looked around and helped them chop some firewood, cut some trees from the mountain, moved some stones, and helped them repair the house. When he finished, it was already dark. He roasted the lamb leg he got from the Feng tribe and cooked some wild vegetable soup. Xiaofan and old He's family finished eating, then got up and left. Old He wanted to keep Xiaofan here to talk more. He still had a lot of questions to ask Xiaofan, but looking at the sky outside, he didn't stay any longer. You rest first. I'll come back tomorrow. Xiaofan said before leaving. With Xiaofan's words, old He felt more at ease. When Xiaofan returned to the resting place of the traveling team, everyone was discussing the things they had exchanged with the Feng tribe. You had gotten some good furs. Of course, the most important thing was that he had gotten some herbs from the grassland that he had never seen before. These were what excited him the most. Xiaofan, do you know that there are many poisonous plants on this grassland? You asked. Yes, I've heard about it. Xiaofan had heard old He mention it when he was chatting with him today. For people like you, those were treasures, but for the people on the grassland, those were demons. Not all green represented life, some represented death. Many times, when the herds of cattle and sheep on the grasslands were grazing, they would accidentally eat the plants that looked similar to the food they usually ate and thus die. That kind of poisonous grass could kill livestock and bring great losses to the people in the tribe. What was even more troublesome for the people in the tribe was that the poisonous grass had strong vitality and reproductive ability. As long as the roots were preserved, they would grow again in a short time. Even if all the poisonous weeds in the grasslands were cleared this year, they would still be covered in poisonous weeds in the coming year. This was because the seeds of many poisonous plants were spread by the wind, or their germination would be delayed by a few years, making them extremely difficult to clean up. One of the reasons why wanderers were needed on the grassland was because of these poisonous grasses. There were too many poisonous weeds, and the people in the tribe were not willing to spend too much energy on them. Luckily, there were wanderers, so they only needed to pay a small amount to make them work. What the wanderers needed was the tribe's protection. In some tribes, the poisonous weeds grew too fast, and there were not enough people and time to eliminate them. When livestock died, the healthy grassland shrank significantly. They would start a war with other tribes, wanting to snatch the grassland. Not long ago, the Feng tribe was attacked because of this. Xiaofan looked at the poisonous grasses that you took out. Today, when he was walking on the grassland, he saw a lot of them, but there were no livestock moving around. Presumably, they had to wait until the grass was cleared before letting the cattle and sheep go. Yu was still studying the poisonous grasses that he was interested in, while Xiaofan leaned against the wooden wall, thinking about something. Compared to Yan Shuo, Old He's situation was really good. Although life was a little difficult, and there were occasional wars between the tribes, overall, it was still peaceful. Perhaps, because of this peace, there was no need to face all kinds of threats from people and things every day, and there was no need to deal with all kinds of serious crises. Many wanderers of the Yanjiao tribes on the grassland did not show totem patterns like Yan Shuo's. There were very few people who could show faint patterns. This was the situation that Xiaofan learned from Old He. Xiaofan originally thought that when the time came, he would find these people and bring them back to the Yanjiao tribe across the river. But now it seemed that it would be very difficult. There were many young adults, but after all, they were not totem warriors, and their abilities were limited. Moreover, there were many old, weak, sick, and disabled people. Xiaofan did not intend to give up on these people. But now, he needed to think of a way to better solve this problem. Perhaps, when the shaman let Xiaofan come here to find other Yanjiao tribesmen, he did not expect to encounter such a situation. People like Old He, who were old and had not awakened their totem power, simply could not travel safely. Telling the tribes on the grassland to treat the wanderers of the Yanjiao tribe well? It was useless. This method did not work on the grassland. If it was a big tribe like the Thousand Masks tribe, even if the other side was not willing to, they would still change their attitude and not be so harsh. But now, if you went and told them that I am from the Yanjiao tribe, they would look at you with disdain. Most of the time, the other party would squint at you. Who the hell is the Flaming Horns tribe? Strength, fame, and the benefits brought by it made every tribe hope that their tribe would become more and more prosperous. There was no real peaceful diplomacy here. Most of the strong tribes were very strong, such as the Thousand Masks tribe. Only when they were strong enough and powerful enough, would they make people afraid. After thinking about it, Xiaofan decided to take some people back to the tribe first. When the tribe came from the other side, he would call back the scattered tribesmen. The next day, Xiaofan went to Old He's place again. Old He's foot injury was much better. Although he had not awakened his totem power, and was not even as strong as Yan Shuo, he was still a Yanjiao tribesman, and the blood of the Yanjiao tribe flowed in his body. Old He's grandson was much better. He had a good meal yesterday and was in good spirits today. He even helped his grandmother to weed the grass in the grassland. Xiaofan also went to help. Old He moved slowly with a limp. He could not stay idle, and while digging the grass, he talked to Xiaofan. In fact, my father also showed his totem pattern, but it was very little and very shallow. I remember that I was still young at that time. At night, when I was about to go to sleep in my room, suddenly there was a warning horn from the Feng tribe. My father said that there was a wolf attack. That night, my father participated in the defense of the Feng tribe and killed several wolves. When he came back, I saw the pattern on his face. He said that it was the totem pattern of the Yanjiao tribe's totem warriors. Speaking of his father, Old He's face was full of pride. Every time he talked with the wanderers of other tribes, he would mention this. Xiaofan listened to old He while digging out the poisonous grass. Yesterday, he had learned about these poisonous grass from you, and knew which grass in this grassland was poisonous and which was not. The tribe asked the wanderers to dig out the poisonous grass. If there were dead lambs and calves in the area, the wanderers would not be able to get rewards from the tribe, but would be beaten or even driven out of the territory of the tribe. Outside the territory of the tribe, there would be many dangers from people or beasts. If they could not find a safe place to stay for a long time, the people who were driven out would soon die. However, there were poisonous grass in this grassland, and naturally there would be other herbs. Xiaofan also found several kinds of poisonous grass when he was digging, many of which were reminded by old He. These herbs were relatively common in this grassland, and were rare in other places. While he was digging, not far ahead, a child about the same age as old He's grandson was dragging a piece of wood thicker than him with a straw rope. Although the child was much stronger than old He's grandson, his face turned red with suffocation when he pulled such a piece of wood. Old He saw the child and asked, "Guaer, what are you doing with the wood?" Guaer's family and old He's family had cooperated for a long time. The grassland that old He was digging was the place where Guaer's family often grazed. Sometimes old He would help Guaer's family to guard the sheep. "Hey, old He, come and help me!" Guaer shouted when he saw old He. Xiaofan stopped old He, who was about to come forward, and went to pull the wood that Guaer was dragging. The wood didn't look obvious, but it was actually quite heavy. However, this weight was nothing for Xiaofan. In the forest of the hunting area, Xiaofan had seen stronger and heavier wood. The wood that Guaer dragged was very thick, but not long, only half a meter. People of the Feng tribe didn't like to use wood as weapons. Most of the time, they would chop it and burn it, or use it to build houses, tents and fences. After Guaer came over, he sat down on the ground, gasping. He didn't answer old He, but looked up and down at Xiaofan, who helped him pull the wood. Although old He's grandson was about the same age as Guaer, children in the tribe rarely played with children of wanderers. Wanderers were not slaves, but they were still looked down upon. After all, wanderers needed to rely on these tribes to survive. Therefore, when Guaer came, he always ordered old He around, and once fought with old He's grandson. But because the two families had known each other for a long time and needed each other, they didn't make a big fuss. After observing for a while, Guaer asked Xiaofan, "Are you a member of the traveling team? I haven't seen you in the tribe." "Yes, I am." Xiaofan lifted the wood easily and put it in front of Guaer. Guaer leaned forward and asked, "Did you carve a few beasts with the bones of the animals? They are so big, and one of them looks like this." Guaer said as he gestured. Xiaofan nodded, "That's what I carved." He also exchanged some things for those carvings. Getting Xiaofan's affirmation, Guaer's eyes brightened. He moved closer to Xiaofan, with an expectant smile on his face. "Can you carve another one? Use this wood I brought." Xiaofan looked at Guaer silently, and showed a thoughtful look. "What can you exchange for it?" Chapter 181. With what? Guaer was stunned for a while. Yesterday, he saw that his little friend had several exquisite and lifelike bone carvings, and he showed them off in their small group. Guaer also wanted a wood carving. Compared with these, the wood carvings made by other people in the tribe were not at the same level. Guaer heard that he wanted to exchange with the traveling team, so he went there to look for him, but he didn't find him. So he planned to find a tree first, and then ask someone to carve a wood carving for him. Yes, Guaer didn't like bone carvings, stone carvings were second. Compared to stone carvings, Guaer wanted wood carvings more. Stone carvings were too easy to break. His grandfather had also carved something for him. Carvings were naturally made of very common stones. If he wasn't careful, he would break it. In contrast, several wood carvings were still in good condition. Even if many people thought that wood carvings were more fragile than stone carvings, he still preferred wood carvings. Today, Guaer took advantage of his father's patrol and shamelessly followed him. He also asked his father to cut a stump for him and drag it back. He didn't expect to meet Xiaofan here. When Guaer went to the traveling team to find people, he carefully asked about Xiaofan's appearance. Just now, he was just suspicious. Now that he got the confirmation, he was naturally very happy. However, Xiaofan's question stumped him again. Yes, people in the traveling team all needed to exchange with things. These people were not his family members, so they wouldn't do things for free. What to exchange with? Sheep? Cattle? If he dragged it out to exchange, would he be beaten by his mother when he went back? After that, his father would beat him. He didn't think about it before. Now thinking about it carefully, Guaer was a little hesitant. But he really wanted a wood carving like that, which was better than his grandfather's. Unfortunately, neither his father nor his mother would exchange things for a wood carving or stone carving. They thought it was not worth it and not worthwhile. This was also the reason why Guaer envied his little friend very much. Guaer couldn't think of a way and was anxious. He was afraid that Xiaofan would refuse. He grabbed his hair and opened his mouth several times, but didn't know what to say. Well, Xiaofan said when Guaer was hesitating, "You promise me one thing, as long as it is within my power, I will carve for you." "What is it?" Guaer asked. "Help old he and the others more often. For example, don't let little Anai be bullied by others. If old he's family is in trouble, help them to the best of your ability." What do you think? Anai was the name of old he's grandson. Guaer and the others would not accept Anai, and Anai was often bullied. Xiaofan wanted to fight back for him, but it wasn't appropriate for him to intervene in a battle between children. Besides, old he's family still needed to live here, and the Feng tribe wasn't a place where they would compromise just because you were strong. You don't even have this ability? Of course it's possible. Guayu said with a stiff neck. From the chat with old he, Xiaofan also knew that Guaer's father had some power in the tribe, and Guaer also had a certain influence in his small group. If this kid didn't make things difficult for them, and if he could help them, old he's family would naturally be able to live a better life here until the Yanjiao tribe came back. Guaer didn't think what Xiaofan said was difficult, but he wasn't too stupid and knew how to bargain. "I promise you, but you have to carve well, and can't be worse than the bone carvings you gave others before." "Okay. I'll watch from the side. If you don't do it well, I won't agree." "Okay." Xiaofan had polished several small stone knives with good quality during the journey. Those animal bones weren't very hard, so these small stone knives were enough to carve wood. Naturally, they could also be used to carve wood. Since Guaer said he would carve here, Xiaofan didn't move. The wood brought by Guaer was good. The texture was fine and tough, and it wasn't easy to deform, so the carving effect should be better. "What do you want to carve?" Xiaofan asked. I want. Guaer thought carefully and said, "Wolf, I want a wolf." Compared with those animals that he had never seen and wouldn't appear on the grassland, Guaer wanted a wolf wood carving more. Wolves were very common on the grassland. Although the people of the Feng tribe also hunted wolves, they still had a little reverence for wolves. If the wolves didn't attack the tribe and didn't take away their livestock, they wouldn't attack the wolves. "I want a majestic head wolf," Guaer said with a longing face. Xiaofan didn't quite understand this child's obsession with a head wolf, but old he next to him told him the reason. In some tribes on the grassland, there was a story. Of course, in fact, no one knew which tribe's ancestors had made up the story. It was said that a tribe was often attacked by wolves. The tribe's shaman predicted that the wolves would attack a warrior's house, so he used a stone to carve a wolf and put it in front of the warrior's house. In the evening, when the wolves came, they saw the stone carving and thought it was the Wolf King, so they were scared away. This kind of story was only believed by children. When they grew up, they no longer believed it. However, Guire still believed in it. But he also knew that not everyone had the ability of the shaman in the story. What's more, the wood he brought back was not big, so naturally it couldn't be compared with the wood carving in the story. He just wanted a wood carving like that to satisfy his desire. Wolf. Xiaofan's first thought was Caesar, who was left in the tribe. After being carved, Caesar was qualified to be the head wolf. Not only did he succeed in his revenge, but he could also fight against the ferocious beasts in the forest. Xiaofan didn't know how strong he was now. Recalling Caesar's appearance, and his appearance when hunting in the forest, Xiaofan began to carve. Guire still wanted to learn some carving skills, but unexpectedly, the person in front of him moved faster and faster. At first, he could still see the movement of each cut, and pieces of wood were cut down, but soon, he couldn't keep up with Xiaofan's speed. The only thing he could see was the splashing wood chips like rainstorm, which forced him to step back several steps. Guire wanted to ask some questions, but found that the carver in front of him seemed to be immersed in some kind of state, which made people unable to get involved. He grabbed some splashing wood chips with his hand, and stared at Xiaofan. He couldn't see clearly the movement of Xiaofan's arm, but he could see clearly the totem pattern on Xiaofan's face. It was the totem pattern of the Yanjiao tribe, much clearer than his father's. Carving a wood carving didn't necessarily need totem power, but Xiaofan would naturally use it when he was serious about carving. The stone knives in his hand were not so easy to use. Many times, in order to carve the desired effect more accurately, the strength and speed needed to be controlled well, without the slightest mistake. Xiaofan practiced fine and precise control when learning stone crafting, which also made carving much easier. The four people around him couldn't help but stop what they were doing, and stared at Xiaofan. As the wood chips fell quickly, the wood carving in Xiaofan's hand gradually took shape. Guire's breath gradually became heavier. He had never seen anyone carve like this. At the same time, he had a feeling that this wood carving was what he wanted, and even better than he had imagined. When Xiaofan stopped carving the stone knife in his hand, he held the wood carving, which had already taken shape but was covered with a layer of wood chips in his other hand, and blew on it. The wood chips covering the wood carving flew up and left the wood carving. Under the dazzling yangguang, it was like sprinkling a handful of gold powder. And the wood carving also showed its true appearance. It was a very strong wolf, and the viewers could even feel the strong muscles under the fur. It stood there with its head held high, without baring its teeth, howling, or raising its claws. It just stood there, with its head slightly tilted, as if it was looking at something not worth mentioning. With a kind of indescribable power, it seemed that everything in front of it couldn't pass it, and could only retreat. The wood carving was not big, it looked like the size of a puppy, but it gave people a completely different feeling. "Are you satisfied with this?" Xiaofan held the wood carving in his hand and asked Guire. "Yes. Yes." Guire excitedly reached out to receive it carefully. "So, do you remember what you promised before?" Xiaofan asked again. "What promise?" "Oh, yes, of course I remember. Take care of old he and the others." Looking at the wood carving in his hand, Guire felt that this deal was really satisfactory. Once a promise is made, it's hard to take it back. Guire was a little confused by Xiaofan's words. "That is to say, once you said this, even if you put on the 4 strongest horses in your tribe, it's hard to catch up with them. You can't take back your words, and you must keep your promise." Xiaofan explained simply. Of course. Guire now only wanted to take the wood carving back, so he didn't stay any longer. He got up and left. After Guire left, Xiaofan turned his head and met the eyes of old He's grandson, little Nai. You also want a wood carving? Xiaofan asked. Yes. Nai nodded heavily. What kind? Also a wolf. No need, Xiaofan rubbed Nai's half-long hair and said, at that time, you will see the real one. It's much more majestic than that. Not only a wolf, but also a cave lion, a big-headed forest raccoon, and many more. Xiaofan told old He's family some things about the tribe, and also carved a totem with a stone, a pair of flaming horns. Old He was old, and had experienced too many things. Countless setbacks and blows, ups and downs. Now, although he was not calm, he was much calmer than Yan Shuo. It was just that his hand, which could usually hold the stone pickaxe steadily, was trembling when he held the small totem with 2 horns, and didn't calm down for a long time. After a long while, old He turned to a direction, carefully put the stone carving in front of him, and then kowtowed in the way of the Yanjiao tribe. Nai and old He's wife also kowtowed. After kowtowing, old He stood up. The tribe used to be in that direction, but they left later on. I've never been there. I only know that the old haunt is there. My father told me about it, and my father also learned about it from my grandfather. It was passed down from generation to generation. They said that although the tribe left the old land, the roots are still there. If the tribe still exists, one day, the tribe will return to the old land and rekindle the fire. Xiaofan, you don't have to look for the lost tribesmen one by one. There are many wanderers in the Yanjiao tribe. Maybe many people don't know where they belong, and many people don't know the past, and can't see the future. But, when the fire is rekindled in the old land, all the wanderers in the Yanjiao tribe will be able to go home. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.